right, good morning, everybody. Before we begin our meeting today, we want to note two things. First, it is Councilman Bruce Blakeman's birthday, so let's all give Councilman a round of applause and happy birthday. Second, also, we begin October, and it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Probably everybody here has in some way been touched by breast cancer. It's estimated that 1 in 8 women born today will be affected by breast cancer at some point in their life. Senior Councilwoman Dorothy Gooseby has been a champion for this cause, has hosted an event here for years. She's hosting another one this year. And Senior Councilwoman, I'd like you to just take a few minutes if you'd like to just speak a bit about that.
Okay, thank you. On the 19th of October, we invite you to come. We're celebrating the 17th annual breast cancer forum that we have here in the town of Hempstead. Because of it, we have saved many, many lives. There are people who will come, will tell you because of what we have done, their lives were saved. And this time we're also including men. So we have many doctors who are specialists in the various positions that they're in. And we have nurses, we'll have a van. So if you need to have a mammogram, all you need to do is make sure you bring a prescription with you, and you may have it here. So we hope to have you here. It's on the 19th, and it starts at 11 a.m. You're all invited.
Thank you, Senior Councilwoman, and thank you for all your advocacy on this important issue. All right, so welcome to this regularly scheduled town board meeting. For those of you who have never attended a town board meeting before, we will first have public hearings, followed by an administrative calendar. After the administrative calendar is concluded, we will remain in session, as is our tradition for 350 years, to hear the public on any other matters on which they'd like to address the town board. If anybody would like to be heard on any matter, there are agendas available in the rear of the pavilion. Please fill out a slip, indicate the item that you would like to be heard on, and hand it to one of the public safety officers, and they'll hand it up to me so I can call on you during the meeting. If you want to be heard on a public hearing, please fill out a different slip for each public hearing. If you want to be heard on the administrative calendar, you can just fill out one slip for the administrative calendar, and you can indicate the items you'd like to be heard on. Madam Clerk, will you please call our roll?
Yes. Supervisor Gillen?
Here.
Councilman Blakeman?
Here.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito?
Aye. I'm here, sorry.
Councilman Dunn?
Here.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Here. Councilman Muscarella?
Here.
I now ask Councilman Blakeman to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand if you're able and join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm sorry, if I could just ask everyone to remain standing. I apologize. Just a moment of silence for NYPD officer Brian Mulkeen, who was killed, murdered, unfortunately in the line of duty in a terrible accident in the Bronx. He was a member of the Bronx anti-crime team. He is without a doubt a hero. And the motto in the NYPD, our motto is Fidelis ad Mortem, which is faithful until death. And he lived that motto until his dying breath. So please, a moment of silence right now.
Thank you, Councilman Diaz-Bazito. If I may just supplement that as well. That same week, we lost a deputy sheriff here in the United States, Dollarwheel. Deputy Sheriff Dollarwheel. He was a trailblazer. He was one of the first Sikh police officers in the United States that actually wore his turban on duty. He also was killed in the line of duty. So, along with Police Officer McKean, if you would remember Deputy Sheriff Dollarwheel in your prayers today.
Thank you.
At this time, the town clerk will be delivering a copy of the tentative budget to each town board member. Madam Clerk, will you please take on those duties and let the record reflect that that is occurring right now. I thank April Smith, my financial advisor. I thank the members of the Controller's Office and my Chief of Staff who all worked so hard in preparing the 2020 tentative budget which delivers the tax cuts to our residents. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please call our first public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding regulations and restrictions to limit parking in Lakeview, Oceanside, near Rundle Center, South Hempstead, Wantagh, and Woodmere.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Sorry. Something was wrong with it. I move that the public hearing be closed and the proposal be accepted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Muscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding parking or standing prohibitions in Lakeview, Roosevelt, and Wantagh.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Move that the public hearing be closed and that the proposed legislation be accepted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Muscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding arterial stops in Elmont and West Hempstead.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I'd like to move that the motion be closed and adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Muscarella?
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Proposed local law regarding traffic regulations in the vicinity of schools in Seaford.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and that the local law be adopted. Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Muscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
To review the recommendation of the Town of Hempstead Landmarks Preservation Commission that the Franklin Square Movie Theater, 989 Hempstead Turnpike in Franklin Square, New York, be designated as a historical landmark.
Okay, I have a number of slips on this public hearing. The first one,
Supervisor, before we hear from the public on that, I believe the terminology should be adopt the recommendations of the Landmark Commission. Council, do we need an amendment to that? This says review. We are adopting.
We're adopting.
No amendment.
You can do it right there. You can say it right there.
Okay, yeah, I would move, I would move to amend the resolution to replace the word review with adopt the recommendations of the Town of Hempstead Landmarks Preservation Commission that the Franklin Square Movie Theater at 989 Hempstead Turnpike, Franklin Square, New York, be designated as a historical landmark.
Second motion.
Madam Clerk, we're voting on the amendment right now.
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Muscarella?
Aye.
Okay. Wayne Edwards.
Good morning, Supervisor Gillen and members of the board.
Can you pull up the microphone so we can hear the guy?
For the record, my name is Wayne Edwards, on Ward Castleman, 333 Gulf Oakland Boulevard, New York. I'm the attorney for the property owner located at 989 Hempstead Turnpike in Franklin Square. Property owner is 989 Hempstead Turnpike LLC. Before I start my presentation, I would like to request that Councilman Muscarella and Councilman Blakeman recuse themselves. Prior to this hearing, they sent out letters to the Franklin Square community, which basically stated that they have already predetermined this case, this matter. In addition, Councilman Muscarella and Blakeman issued a press release which basically said that they predetermined the case. And I feel that my client is not going to get a fair determination from those two councilmen at this point in time. So I can submit a copy of the letter and a copy of the press release for the record.
Yeah, if I could be heard on that, Counselor, we are elected officials and we are entitled to express an opinion as to legislation. As a matter of fact, we propose legislation all the time before it's adopted. We support it. We say that we're in favor of it. That's why we put it on the calendar. Here you had a unanimous decision by the Historical Landmark Commission to make this movie theater in Franklin Square an historical landmark. I am proposing that. Councilman Muscarella will second that today, and we are in favor of it, unless we hear something during the hearing that would change our judgment and that would make us not do that, because that's the nature of a public hearing. And we have done that in the past where we've supported something or not supported something, then we heard at a public hearing something that changed our minds, which we have a prerogative to do. So this is a proposal to put this on the calendar. We're not voting on it until we hear from the public. We will keep an open mind up till that point. But yes, we are proposing this legislation, and it's perfectly normal. It's done every day, and it's a nice try, Councilor.
Well, then I'll go to my second item.
Is it as good as your first?
Under landmark law, section 7, chapter 76, this town board is required to have a hearing 90 days from the date of the decision. We send a letter, a copy to Joseph Robb, the town attorney, copy the supervisor, counsel to the town board, and the counsel to deputy town attorney Tiffany and Regina.
Counselor, I will say that I did in fact receive your letter. And in fact, when this matter first came up, we noticed that there was this 90-day window, and we spoke to the town attorney, actually we spoke to counsel for the majority about it, and he expressed an opinion that that was not germane on whether or not we could hear this matter after the 90-day period. And Mr. Rott, I would request your opinion on this as well. If this is a procedural defect that must be corrected or not.
The 90-day limit that you're referring to is directional and not jurisdictional. So the hearing can proceed. I'll have no further comment on it because I figured there would be some litigation here.
I think you figured right, and we think there's two other items in terms of that. The code also says that after the notice of decision, it should be sent to the property owner and interested parties forthwith. I didn't receive, and I was at the hearing representing my client, I did not receive an official copy of that decision until September. Now, the word forthwith means that basically within a time period after that hearing. So that's another procedural matter which I guess at some point in time might be litigated. I don't need to have an opinion regarding that. Obviously, you don't feel it's jurisdictional. My office does feel it's jurisdictional, and that this hearing is being held improperly.
Counselor, are you talking about the notice that should have been sent by the Landmarks Commission?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of our opinion, the Landmarks Commission has failed my client, but also failed as town board. Let's take a look at the notice of decision. I assume each of you have a copy of it. If not, I can make copies of it. It's dated February 26th. That's a copy of it. If anybody needs a copy of the decision, I have copies for everybody.
Ms. Hanson.
That landmark commission, after the hearing, is supposed to give you a recommendation. It should give you more than basically saying, in summary, the commission's decision was based on, but not limited to, the architectural and historical value of the structure known as the Franklin Square movie theater that was built in the early 1900s. The exterior of the theater retains its character and deco design. That is basically a sentence. First of all, it has an error. It wasn't built in the early 1900s. It was built in the mid-1930s. So that's incorrect. Second of all, it doesn't give you any meaning. It just
The
basically...
mid-1900s are the mid-1900s.
No, he said early 1900s, Mr. Council.
Okay, well, that's before
That's-
halfway through the 1900s, so that's...
I think you know what I mean.
I
If
do,
you-
but
I guarantee
I don't think that has any bearing on
Having
this.
practiced law with you, you wouldn't do that either.
Excuse
You
me?
wouldn't, having practiced law with you, when we were together for that short time, I don't think you would have worked it that way either.
Can you talk in the mic?
I think that's a compliment.
It is a compliment. And first of all, happy birthday. We presented evidence at that hearing, and which I'll basically have to present to you today so that you can make a fair determination. But that this theater should not be landmarked. And in addition, if you look at the decision, what are they landmarking? Are they landmarking the front exterior? Are they landmarking the entire building? Are they landmarking the use? Most of the testimony on that day was basically everybody loved going to the Franklin Theater. They had a warm memory of it. But that doesn't make it landmark. I have a lot of warm memories about structures and buildings within the town of Hempstead. I've lived here all my life in Nassau County as well, and that doesn't make it, that shouldn't be designated, or reason for designating this landmark. My client acquired the property in September 21st, 2018. He owns the adjoining property where the Signature Gym is. There's an application to the town of Hempstead to make that into storage, and we think that's the reason, that's the impetus for going after this piece of property. It's to try to make him give up that application. He went to the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Board of Zoning Appeals denied that application. Over 6 months afterwards, he filed an appeal, not of the decision, but an appeal that the board didn't issue a decision. A judge in Supreme Court said you're entitled to your special use permits, you're entitled to your variances for this self-storage center, and that's being appealed by the town. The town defaulted on the decision. Now they're trying to open it up so they can put in the defense. As I said to you, the building was built around mid-1930s. It was actually a result of a decision by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Can I keep going on? I think this is important.
I'm sorry, everybody has to adhere to the 3-minute time limits.
Supervisor, I'm not going to get a chance to put the fence, and then let me submit my exhibits and my presentation for the record, so that when the judge eventually makes the decision, then I guess we'll be back here.
So can you just note for the record what you're going to be handing up to us?
Okay, I'm going to be submitting a copy of the file from the Board of Zoning Appeals dated 1933, February 18th, 1933, which has the original plans for the theater. I was going to note those original plans were never built. I have current pictures of the interior and exterior of the theater. I have a CO search and copies of the certificate section from the Town of Hempstead Building Department, which shows that since 1934-35, the theater has been substantially altered. It went from a 955-seat theater to a 6-plex, and has been under different owners. I have copies of all this for you if you want.
Thank you. You can hand them up to Ms. Hanson, and give her all the copies, and she'll distribute them to us.
I also have from a source called Cinema Treasures, which basically document theaters from all over the country, that this theater has a history of the theater. It was a 955-seat theater. Basically, they said that it was a neighborhood house showing a mix of second runs with occasional front runs. It actually has a very interesting photograph of you, which is the original marquee. That original marquee was taken out in 1963 and replaced twice already. And it was actually a nice marquee. And that's basically it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
And also Lashana Tova, it's October.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Okay, next we have Margaret Kelly.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Kelly.
My name is Margaret Kelly. I'm the president of the Community League of Garden City South Incorporated. I reside in West Hempstead. I just listened to the attorney that spoke in regards to the ownership of the building. And the first thing that popped into my mind is how he's stating the interior has changed so much over the years. As far as I understood, and speaking with the historical and doing presentation, the interior of the building has absolutely nothing to do with historical. So it doesn't matter what that building becomes, as long as the exterior, the Art Deco, remains the same. This is very important to our community, as it stands out as what our forefathers, we believe they meant for this town to be. Most of Franklin Square is historical, and we will push in the future to bring either further buildings to historical status, or possibly even a downtown area, historical downtown area, which would become absolutely impossible if this should not pass. I have in front of me from the town of Hempstead, and I made photocopies, screenshot and photocopies. It says the conservation, protection, and preservation of historical places and sites, structures and buildings are matters of public interest in harmony with the comprehensive town plan to promote cultural education and to foster civic pride. I'm here as a civic leader, and this is part of our civic pride. This building in the town of Hempstead, I'm not going to bore everybody with the presentation that you've all had, that we've presented multiple times in front of the committee. But as a lifelong resident of Franklin Square, 52 years, every memory of my childhood growing up in Franklin Square reflects back to weekends at the movie theater with friends, summers at the movie theater with the friends. That's what we did. We had families from when we were young, families in there. To change the structure of this building in any way, shape, or form, whether it be a three-story building, a parking lot, whatever the proposed plans are, would just be devastational to our community. In the event that we do become a revitalized Franklin Square, a building of an industrial magnitude rather than a commercial magnitude, would impact this community immensely. And happy birthday, Councilman. And just one last note. It's my understanding that when we go to our councilmen for issues that are going on in our community, they're either for us or against us, and they make it very clear what they'll stand behind and what they don't. They have a stake in this community as well as we all do as residents, and we're very happy that our councilmen have taken that stance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, one of the things that we've been trying to do, and we haven't been successful yet, is to get some landmark designation for Hempstead Turnpike. Some people outside of Franklin Square and Elmont don't realize that our first president, George Washington, actually used Hempstead Turnpike for his tour of Long Island. So I would like to see, maybe the town could do that if the state's not going to do it. It's a state highway, but I think there should be recognition that, you know, George Washington, because I think that's a big deal, was actually in Elmont and Franklin Square in West Hempstead.
Ironic you should say that, because I have been putting together a composite of possibly having historical signs put along the turnpike and in designated areas, so that people that enter our town actually can see what our history is, rather than just going by word of mouth from, you know, third, fourth generations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Catherine Tarascio?
morning, and thank you, Supervisor and council members, for hearing me today. My name is Catherine Trabasio, and I'm from Franklin Square. Today, I want to talk a bit about the architecture of the Franklin Theater and what makes it so significant. From its location on Hempstead Turnpike, nestled in the center of the Hamlet's downtown business district, this local movie house has served the community for over 80 years. But a poor paint job partially conceals what makes the Franklin Theater so significant. It is likely the last Art Deco movie theater left in the town of Hempstead. Designation would protect the exterior of the Deco Theater from insensitive renovations and preserve this example of a dwindling genre of buildings for hopefully many years to come. In 1925, a sign went up on an empty lot along Hempstead Turnpike between what is now Franklin Avenue and William Avenue in a town that had been on the Long Island map since the 1890s, but was settled much earlier. By the time of the theater's construction in 1932 to 33, Franklin Square had been busy for a decade organizing itself into a proper town. A trolley line connected it to the city. By 1920, a water district was established in 1921. Sanitation and modern streetlights appeared in the early 30s, and plots of farmland were being sold all along to developers for new homes and new schools to accommodate the population boom. In the middle of all that was the perfect place for a sleek, modern, and up-to-date movie house, and that is exactly what theater builder Abraham H. Schwartz planned to construct. Schwartz had been building theaters since the turn of the 20th century and had prided himself on constructing theaters that were fireproof, had the newest equipment, and were completely modern in design and form. In the 1930s, he was working with an architect named R. Thomas Short, who once worked for James E. Ware and Sons. Short was well known for designing large, ornate apartment buildings in New York City, such as Red House, Alwyn Court Apartments, the Studio Building, which is across the street from the American Museum of Natural History. So if you've ever been there, you can walk around the block and see it. And all of these, including some of his other works, are now designated New York City landmarks and are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The Franklin Theater ended up being slightly less grand than either Schwartz or Short had planned for, having been constructed during the grips of the Depression. Despite the property being purchased and plans being made as early as 1925, the Franklin Theater did not open until October of 1933. Art Deco itself was thought of as a statement of modernity and progress, the style being innovative while pulling from traditional influences. While at first look it is unassuming, the architecture of the Franklin demonstrates typical small-scale modern Art Deco design, common among the genre in the 1930s and common among other Art Deco buildings in the town of Hempstead. The angles are streamlined. It has decorative brickwork which alternates in color and texture, and it features a central applied arch design constructed of either terracotta or cement. While the interior has been completely remodeled, it is totally irrelevant. That is totally irrelevant to the designation process. The exterior has only had cosmetic changes over the years.
Ms. Tarasio, I'm so sorry, but you're going to have to ask you to wrap up your comments because we're keeping everybody to 3 minutes.
That's fine, but I'll continue. The lawyer continued, so I think maybe it's one more paragraph. The most lamentable of these changes is the removal of its parapet, the removal of its marquee in the early 60s. The two-story Franklin is flanked equally on either side by post-war single-story storefronts and exists in an area which has several other historical buildings, some of them landmarks. These include the Franklin National Bank, 2 blocks to the east, the Flatiron Altenheim, 4 blocks to the west, and the 1925 St. Catherine of Siena Roman Catholic Church. Most important, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, the significance of the Franklin Theater to the local community and within the architectural landscape in which it sits is the fact that a preliminary survey of historic theaters in the town of Hempstead demonstrates that not only is the Franklin one of the few to survive the wrecking ball or insensitive renovations of property owners, but that it is likely the last Art Deco movie theater left standing in the town of Hempstead. Of the 33 1970s historic theaters surveyed, 8 were demolished, 2 were still operating as theaters, 1 of these is heavily renovated, and the rest were closed, renovated beyond recognition, repurposed, or modified for retail. The Franklin is the only Art Deco theater that could be found, and one of the very few historic theaters.
Ms. Tarasio, I'm sorry, I did make Mr. Edwards stop, so thank you for your extremely thorough presentation and for this handout as well.
May I just comment, that was very thorough. Thank you so much for that history.
It's an important asset if we lost the theater. The town of Hempstead is an important asset.
I grew up 2 miles from that theater. I remember a lot of good times there. And, you know, we lost the Argo Theater in Elmont. We lost the Valley Stream Theater on Rockaway Avenue in Valley Stream. So it would be a shame if we lost another theater like that. So thank you for your presentation.
Thanks for listening to me and for letting me go over it.
Thank you. Now we have Frank Colmont.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Frank Colmoni, and I'm Secretary of the Franklin Square Civic Association. I don't really need to address Councilman Blakeman or Muscarella. I just went to my high school, Sewanee High School 50th reunion. And at that reunion, we had many constituents that belonged to Anthony Esposito, Dorothy Gooseby, and Mr. Dunn. I have a list of names if you want them. There were over 25 people that were at that reunion that support the Franklin Square Theater being a landmark, as well as other people that were at the reunion that lived in California, Colorado, and other places. All went to Sewanee, all of us graduated in '69, all of us are very active in the communities that we live in. We hope that this town council, barring any other things, votes for landmark status of Franklin Square Theater. I didn't take up any more of your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Sarah Katz?
Good morning, Supervisor and council members. My name is Sarah Cohen, Preservation Director at Preservation Long Island. We are a regional nonprofit advocate for historic preservation across Long Island, and we wish to submit this letter in support of the Landmark Preservation Commission's recommendation to designate the theater. Located on Hempstead Turnpike in the heart of Franklin Square's historic downtown business district, the theater has served this community for more than 80 years. Despite some insensitive alterations, the theater's original Art Deco grandeur remains evident, and its prominent role in Franklin Square residents' sense of place is as strong as ever. Opened in 1933 as part of the Circuit City theater chain, the property is architecturally and historically significant as one of the last surviving 1930s Art Deco-style movie theaters in the town of Hempstead. Town landmark designation would encourage the rehabilitation of this unique historic resource, which has enormous potential to enhance downtown revitalization efforts in Franklin Square. We note that the award-winning restoration of Suffolk Theater in Riverhead, New York, has played a key role in the revitalization of its surrounding community. It was also built as a Circuit City movie house and opened just 2 months after the Franklin in December 1933. Like its sister theater in Riverhead, the Franklin is worthy of local landmark status and preservation as one of Long Island's few historic theaters to survive demolition or extensive alterations. We applaud the Commission's recommendation to designate the theater as a landmark, and we encourage you to vote in support of the designation. We also encourage the property owners to consider nominating the property for listing on the National and State Register of Historic Places, which would open doors to potential grant opportunities and other financial incentives in support of rehabilitating the site. Thank you very much. Thank you. I am submitting a copy of the letter.
Thank you very much. Eleanor Puna?
Mine is just to tell the council that many of my neighbors did not receive this letter that they said they sent out. I only got the one in August, and I called up in September to find out it was rescheduled for October. But if I hadn't called, I wouldn't be here. And I feel it's unfair that many of the residents that I did call, that I have friends of, they did not receive it. So I don't know how to get the word out, but everybody that spoke belongs to the Historical Society or some other organization, not just a resident.
Ms. Kuna, are you in support of landmark status or are you against it?
I'm for it.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I don't think you stated your name and address for the record, if you would.
It's Eleanor Luna, and my address is 334 Roxbury Road, South, Garden City, South.
Thank you, Ms. Kumar.
Sorry, it's my first time.
Oh, that's okay. You did very well. Thank you. Janet Brosia Lee.
I'm sorry. I passed, I'm sorry.
William Youngford.
Good morning, William Youngford, 258 Roosevelt Avenue, Franklin Square, New York. I have no prepared statement today, but I has come as the President of Franklin Square Library Board, 4th Vice President of Franklin Square Chamber, and past President of the Civic Association. We see the landmarking of this theater a first step in a long overdue revitalization of Franklin Square. If you've been to Westbury and Port Washington and Patchogue, you've seen how the theater is the center of the town and revitalization and businesses flourish. So that's what we want to do in Franklin Square. We have the hub happening in Belmont, and now we need to address the towns in between, and we feel this landmarking status would help make the first step in a long overdue revitalization of our town. We obviously love the theater, and we appreciate your support of this resolution today. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Youngford. William Miller.
William Miller. Hi, I come here as a member of the Landmark Preservation Committee, who, first of all, I want to say on Ms. Tercia, she would have been deemed an expert in any court. She has a degree, she's a master's in historical archaeology. She worked for the state of Massachusetts on historical archaeology. She works in the Museum of Natural History. And I would actually hope that you read her application and make that a part of the record here, because she's rather impressive when she spoke to us as well. Wayne Edwards, a lawyer who I respect greatly, I did not know of an Article 78 proceeding. I did not know of any type of Board of Zoning Appeals hearing. We did not communicate with the supervisor's office or the town board. The only thing that we do is, because the supervisor and the town council people from the area may be addressed this question, we always ask our liaison in the building department to ensure that all their councils are aware of the application so that they can address it if they're in the community and get questions about it, so they're not blindsided. My decision, and I think everybody else's decision, when based on my conversation with board members, all of which were held in public, is whether or not this landmark was culturally, historically significant. It was. The Franklin Theater, which is located on Hempstead Turnpike, is in the very heart of the downstead on Franklin Square, was constructed in the 1930s, opened for business in 1933. The building was designed and constructed in the Art Deco style that you've heard described by Ms. Kelly, streamlined with a minimum of ornamentalism. As such, it was pure expression of the architecture of the 1920s and the 1930s. I don't know of it anywhere else on the island, let alone the town of Hempstead. I just want to make one thing also clear that we made clear in our hearing is the Board of Landmark Commission cannot go to use. You know, our designation is whether or not that marquee and the architecture at that location is historically significant. Now, whether it should be a theater or not, that is beyond what we can do. Our jurisdiction is whether that marquee is historically significant. I think by the record that was created at our Landmark Preservation Committee hearing, which I think was held twice, while I think that based on the application that was submitted, because I think Ms. Kelly submitted an application as well as Ms. Tercia, I think it clearly is historically significant.
Mr. Miller?
I still have 31 seconds.
You do. Can you stop it? I just want to ask you a question for clarification, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Mr. Edwards expressed that there was some ambiguity about what your recommendation was, whether it just affected this facade of the building, the structure. If you could just provide us a little bit of clarity on that.
Sure. The way we interpret the statute, and again, we can make a recommendation, and I only have 27 seconds, just want to be clear. It comes to, anybody can make an application to the Landmark Preservation Committee. If we accept it, they go to the town board. It has to go to the town board. If we reject it, they have an appeal to the town board. This body up here is the last rested as to determination as to whether something is a landmark or not a landmark. However, the way I interpret this charter, I think the way Mr. Van Wise and everybody else interprets not the charter, excuse me, wrong, I'm still in the county, the code, is that whether or not that structure is an architecturally, historically, cultural significance that should be protected. And again, you'll make that decision because you're the final determination as to whether it is. But to this board of the Landmark Preservation Committee, it was clearly, culturally, historically, architecturally significant.
Thank you, Mr. Muller.
In the interest of transparency, Mr. Muller's mother was my assistant for a few years, and she retired last year. And how's your mom doing?
Actually, she's undergoing a medical procedure today, so everybody they could say a prayer. But
we hope that she'll be fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Lovely woman who served the town very, very well.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to be heard on this public hearing? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Yes, Supervisor, it is my pleasure to move that the public hearing be closed and that the recommendations of the Town of Hempstead Historical Committee be adopted to create historical status for the Franklin Square Movie Theater on Hempstead Turnpike in Franklin Square.
I second that motion.
Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Gillen?
I will say that with the recommendation of our town council, that the 90-day window is not a fatal procedural defect to us hearing this application. And I don't think there's anything arbitrary or capricious about any of us reviewing this application and voting on it. So I will proceed to go ahead and do so. I think the residents who have been heard today, as well as the representative from the Landmarks Commission, have made a very compelling presentation. I had reviewed these materials before that were handed up because they were sent to me, and I think that it is very important for us to preserve the beauty that makes people want to live in the town of Hempstead, and I wholeheartedly support this application and vote yes.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby?
Aye.
Councilman Muscarella?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, will you please call our next public hearing?
To review the recommendation of the Town of Hempstead Landmarks Preservation. Okay. To review the recommendation of the Town of Hempstead Landmarks Preservation Commission that the St. Matthias Church, 2856 Jerusalem Avenue, Montauk, New York, be designated as a historic landmark.
Okay, I have a number of slips on this public hearing.
All right, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we change from review to adopt on the recommendation of the Town of Hempstead Landmark Preservation Commission for the St. Matthew's Church, 2856 Jerusalem Avenue, Montauk. Second, right?
Second.
Madam Clerk, we are now voting on the amendment to change the language in the resolution from review to adopt. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby?
Aye.
Councilman Muscarella?
Aye.
Okay, we have a number of slips on this public hearing. We'll bring back Mr. Muller from the Landmark Preservation Committee first.
Thank you. St. Matthias Church is well over a century old and dates from about 1904. It is a distinctive, strict-style rural church. St. Matthias remains on its original site, and overall it exhibits surprisingly good structural integrity. It is one of the very few such churches of its style remaining within the town of Hempstead. St. Matthias Church housed an African-American congregation for most of its existence. The religious denominations which gathered there varied over time, yet most of the congregants in the 20th century had their family roots in the historic African-American community called the Brush, which was principally located in Montauk. This community, which no longer exists as such in the area, is well documented and is of great historical and cultural significance, not only to Wantagh, but to the entire town. Whatever may be said about St. Matthias' age or denominational affiliation, it served the people of the Brush, and so is one of the small number of surviving African-American sites of this kind, not only in the town of Hempstead, on Long Island. There is nothing on Long Island that matches what is at the Brush. For its architectural, historical, and cultural significance, the Landmark Commissioners have recommended that the town board designate St. Matthias a town landmark. Let me just say this also. One of the things we do is the architectural of the site. Before that church, where there was a fire, there was a brush and a congregation from decades prior to the structure that's there now. Okay? We should not have a landmark preservation commission if this is not preserved. There is nothing like, this should be on the federal registry, not just the town of Hempstead booklet that we send out.
I have a few questions for you. Can we have Josh Saban join you, being that he is the applicant and he's part of the Reservation Commission, so we can answer a few questions that I have for both of you?
No. Okay. The reason why I want to say that is that this was one, if you remember the last one, is that you can actually, anybody in the town of Hempstead has standing to bring an application. Josh Soren is on the Landmark Preservation Committee. So we would not let him participate in the hearing, other than as you would.
That's fine. So then you can answer the questions I have.
You can totally ask Josh Soren, but I'm just saying is I don't want it to intertwine Josh Soren's role as local historian, Josh Soren's role on the Landmark Preservation Committee, and that's the only reason why.
Fine.
Mr. Soren is well aware of it. There's also Wantagh has a tremendously active historical society, and they have come to this. One other thing I also, in the last 40 seconds, I just want to point out to everybody here. The Landmark Preservation Committee has rejected applications. We look at every application in the merits of that application. It's not just like, okay, you know what, it's historically significant, we'll just pass it along and let somebody else make the difficult decision. We've actually rejected applications because they were not historically significant, because the applicant didn't meet that. Actually, one in Wantagh. So I just, again, but this one, I don't know of an African-American site on Long Island that has this historical significance. So.
Question number one. It sits in my district, so I have to make sure I do my diligence. The 90-day hearing before it was complied with, right? The 90-day.
So one of the things about it is that I think I don't know, but one of the things that I think that...
It was in February, so it's more than 90 days.
It's more than 90 days. What happened is that I believe is that we did a hearing, it wasn't heard in time, so we did it again, and so it's back again. One of the things that I think...
All right, here's another question.
No,
just let me ask the question, just answer yes or no. Is it the building, the exterior, or the use, or all the above that you want to make a stop?
Yes. So one of the things about it is, again, and I said this with, it was a church there for all this time. We can designate the historical as a landmark and then recommend it to you. I shouldn't say we designate. We recommend it to you and you designate it. That could be, something else, okay? We can't require it to be a church in perpetuity. The town board really, I don't think, can do that. What you can do is that architecture, is that what's there culturally significant? To me, I think it's clearly culturally.
Okay. The next question is, being Olive Guthrie's Alice's restaurant, we don't want it to be a restaurant. You stayed in the building, but you're going to make a restaurant. I don't know if you're too young to remember Alice's restaurant, but every Thanksgiving they play it, and it's a great song, and it's a great story. But the thing is, the historical part of it is, I understand that before it was burned down and then replaced in 1901, it was a part of the Underground Railroad, which gives an incredible historical background to this. I've read this, a couple of people submitted information about that to me. If in fact that's true, this country has been getting rid of eroding historical features anywhere and everywhere in our country. And this is something that really should be held up. Even though it was rebuilt after the fire in 1901, I think it holds historical value. The upkeep is going to be done by, who?
Well, right now I think it's owned by the Episcopalian Church. One of the reasons why I mean, I think there'll be a lawyer speaking after me. The property owners oppose this because they want to sell the property.
Okay, and the reason that people want to take it down is to sell the property and put it on the tax rolls. Right now, it's not on the tax rolls, and it will continue not on tax rolls if we make an historical site, correct?
I don't know what the new use would be.
This is hearsay, I'm just repeating hearsay.
I'll tell you what it is. The problem is that the property is very large. Like, it's a tremendous piece of property, and the church probably is sat in that structure sits in a spot of the property that's kind of doesn't maximize the property. So I would assume that a homeowner or a new owner is going to want to. I shouldn't say that's what they want to do, but it's an inconvenient spot for maximizing the value of that property.
Now, the other one we just did is 1933. This is 1901. It really predates the other one we just passed. So that gives you a tremendous leg up. I did have some other questions. But you know what? The recommendation of your committee, after having a hearing in February 26th to be the exact date, the historical board of landmark status, and you weren't limited to the architectural and historical value of the structure. It was just a better feeling than the one we just passed. The more compassionate to this. And the African American children in our area and on the town of Hempstead deserve to have their history preserved, just like any other area that we're doing historical preservation. So I'm in favor of making this happen. It's been a real tug of war in Montauk. People want to make a 7-Eleven there or put something there that'll make it. And you know what? This is a beautiful site. I drive by it and say, you know what? We should keep that. What are we doing? What are we doing? Give away all our treasures. This is a treasure for us, for Montauk. And the people of Montauk deserve to have some. We have a railroad station there in Montauk. We preserve that. So why not preserve one of the churches too? So, and this one does have historical value. So I just want you to know that in my eyes, even the tug of war back and forth with the people wanting to make money on the land, and the people wanting to make sure that we preserve our history culturally and historically and architecturally. I really believe that I'm asking my colleagues to go with me and adopt this. So I'm on your side.
I know my 3 minutes are up, Supervisor. I just want to say one thing. We did not base our decision on the fact that they wanted that we thought they may tear down the property and stuff like that. Our decision was based on whether or not it was historically, culturally significant. Not what they would turn into the property that would be improper. But it was answering that particular question. We'll say one other thing, I'll leave on this note. We need another person on the Landmark Preservation Committee. It is 4 Caucasian middle-aged men. I'm 47, so I consider myself middle-aged. There is an opening on that board. We should have diversity on that board. And I think that it would be something that would behoove all of us to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We'll take that up. Mr. Miller, can I ask one question, and then you can ask a question, Senior Councilman? I just wanted to get a point of clarification by something raised by the councilman. Was this a stop on the Underground Railroad, or we're not sure?
There was testimony there on the historians. Montauk has a huge historical society. Just like Franklin Square now has multiple groups. And there was testimony that it was, prior to this, was a stop on the Underground Railroad going through, because it was the only really African-American church of that size at that time. However, there was a fire, it did burn down, there was no Underground Railroad in 1904 when this structure was there. So again, I think when I say the Underground Railroad was there, I think that goes to the cultural significance of the location, but also to what I think what the councilman was saying is that there is no church of this type in the town of Hempstead. It just isn't.
Okay. May I ask you a question? I know there are many graves, children and men and women and so forth that were buried in Montauk as well. And I know that there was a group that wanted to purchase that land to build homes, but this board decided it was not going to happen, so they can't use it. Is there any place near this church?
I think Josh Soren's here, and he'll speak and we also have, again, he'll speak on that. I think there was testimony to that, but it didn't factor into the decision that was made because it was on that location. But you are correct. I just tell you, the people that are coming behind us, I know we have 3 minutes. Each one of them would be deemed an expert in affordable law. They have degrees and they have expertise that goes way beyond me.
Thank you, Mr.
And I know that there are many churches that are pushing, that tied with this church, and they really want it saved, so many of them are here today. And that's throughout the town of Hempstead. They have other churches that are part of this.
Sarah Katz.
Good morning, again. Sarah Couch, Preservation Long Island. Going to submit our letter. And again, we wish to support the designation, the recommendation to designate. During May of 2019, the New York State Historic Preservation Office determined that St. Matthias Church is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places, and I have included a copy of that determination with the letter. And they stated that it is architecturally significant as an intact example of a Queen Anne shingle-style ecclesiastical structure of modest scale. They also determined that the property is significant for its social and ethnic history as a religious building constructed in 1904 to serve a historical community of color known as the Brush. We note that St. Matthias is one of the few remaining buildings with direct ties to the Brush, where intensive suburban redevelopment during the 1920s and post-war housing boom displaced many residents and destroyed many of the community's distinctive older properties. The church is a rare survivor that preserves the historical character of the Brush. Surrounded by mature trees and generous yards, the property embodies the distinctive heritage of the Brush community, as well as popular architectural styles and the rural character of Long Island during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Unfortunately, significant structures associated with historical communities of color across Long Island, including this church, are at disproportionately high risk of demolition or insensitive redevelopment. The relative lack of local landmark designation for these sites is a key risk factor that other municipalities have sought to address. For example, following a series of teardowns in the early 2000s, the town of Brookhaven designated the ethnically diverse Bethel Christian Avenue Laurel Hill neighborhood of Setauket as a local historic district in 2005. It is also on the National Register of Historic Places. Similar to the Brush in Hempstead Town, this area of Setauket was settled during the early 1800s by African Americans and Native Americans. Brookhaven Town Landmark designation has greatly reduced the loss of irreplaceable historic properties in this unique neighborhood. Likewise, Hempstead Town designation would help protect St. Matthias Church from potential demolition or insensitive redevelopment. We encourage you to vote in support of this designation. We also encourage the property owners to consider nominating the property for listing on the national and state registers of historic places, which would open doors to potential grant opportunities and other financial incentives in support of preserving the site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gary Hammond. Mr. Hammond.
Good morning. My name is Gary Hammond. I live at 1421 Lakeside Drive in Wanto, within walking distance of St. Matthias, and I drive by it nearly every day. Prior to my retirement, I worked for 38 years for the Nassau County Department of Recreation and Parks in the Division of Museum Services. I retired as a museum registrar, responsible for the entire museum's collections of over 500,000 items. I had previously spoke at the last 3 historical commission meetings concerning St. Matthias. I'm in favor of it. And to support that, I did a 29-page research report, which I submitted to the commission also, documenting the history of the African-American population in the Brush and in Wantor, and also specifically St. Matthias. As people prior to me have said, St. Matthias was built in 1904. It's important because, to even quote from the actual records of the diocese, it's one of the last, actually the only, the first three surviving Episcopal churches built for African Americans in Queens and Nassau. There were none being built by the Episcopal Church in Suffolk. It took the place of the prior African American Methodist Episcopal Church, which had been destroyed by fire sometime between the 1890s and 1907. This building served the community, the African American community, for 114 years, although an Episcopal diocese congregation had already been meeting by 1902. And it survives unaltered as a good example of shingle-style architecture. The local community was heavily Quaker, so in the 1830s, even though we can't document any connection to the Underground Railroad, we knew the Quakers built a school specifically for African American children. They contributed to the population there, and it was freed African Americans in the brush, which is very important. This is the only representation in all of Nassau County that exists like this. And today it really is an oasis. This is the third time, well actually 3 times before this, the diocese attempted to sell the property and demolish the building back in 1927, in 1963, and again 1967. So this isn't the first war or battle that the church has been fought to save it by the community. 52 years ago, Newsday stated that the St. Matthias Episcopal Church is a historical church fighting off an unhappy ending. It further stated that there was a snug little structure of white and brown clapboard, soaring steeple, latticework windows, and a gleaming interior of pine paneling and 5 old beams. It's the same church today. 52 years later, it's the same building. I want to say in 1902, the diocese said they had been doing nothing to support the colored people in the counties, and this is their act to preserve and get the African Americans involved in the community with the Episcopal Church. By landmarking the structure, the town of Hempstead will help in the rediscovery and preservation of this important part of African American and local history, which helps to document Long Island's role in abolishing slavery and creating free black communities. I prepared a 5-minute talk, so that's why I had to abbreviate it. So that's it. Thank you.
Can you supply me with that 29-page research that you did?
As soon as we've done it through the Historical Landmark Commission, I can. I don't have a copy with me, but we can get you one.
When you get it, would you get it to my office and we'll keep it in our files?
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Josh Soren.
Good morning, Supervisor and council members. Put my glasses on. Hold the coffee in order. Okay. I am Joshua Soren. I am the applicant for the consideration of the Town of Hempstead Landmarks Preservation Commission to recommend to the Town of Hempstead Town Board landmark status for St. Matthias Episcopal Church, 2856 Jerusalem Avenue, Wanto. I reside at 34 Return Lane, Levittown, New York, 10756, parentheses, for 61 years. I am also one of the Landmarks Commissioners for 22 years. As a Landmarks Commissioner, I, in parentheses, we, always keep our eyes open for potential sites for landmarking. St. Matthias has been a long time on my wish list, as well as some of my colleagues on the Commission. For a long time, I have been hoping that someone or an organization would submit an application for this site. When it was placed on the market and the real estate sign was placed on the, and erected on the property, I immediately submitted this application on June 14th, 2018. To understand the importance of St. Matthias, I had to go further back into the history of the surrounding area. Located near today's Wanto-Belmore border was a loosely bounded area along Old Mill Road and Oakfield Avenue known as the Brush, named after the landscape of the area. The inhabitants of the Brush were mostly of African American descent, going back several generations whose ancestors were freed slaves and given land mostly by the Jackson and Valentine families, prominent landowners of the time. The Brush settlement thrived,
intermingling with the neighboring communities, and also building a AME, African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, circa 1845 on Oakfield Avenue, and a school nearby. The town of Hempstead has landmarked 3 other sites that relate to this former brush area. The Lawrence House, located on Old Mill Road and Wilson Avenue, home to 3 generations of a family of African American descent. The Harold Avenue Cemetery, circa 1808, where some of the earliest inhabitants of the brush were interred. And the old burying ground, 1851, also known as St. Matthias Cemetery, located on Oakfield Avenue. This last site was where the first AME Zion Church was built, circa 1845. The predecessor, can I go any further?
If you could just wrap up your comments, we're really trying to stick to the 3-minute rule. So just if you would just sum up your comments, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I was going to get into the actual history of the church itself.
If you'd like to hand that up, you can give it to Ms. Hanson and she can make copies for us.
But I have just a few questions for you, so this way we'll now, Seaford has a historical society, and they have a building right by the fire department in Seaford Harbor. And is that as old as this building?
This building is from...
Way before it. So that's one. The second comparison, the Montauk train on Montauk Avenue, that's preservation also. And I think you're on that committee also. That car in Montauk, they preserved that. And that's not older than this building either.
Railroad car is 1912.
Okay. Now, the next thing is Hicksville. My friend Ken Henry, who went to Hofstra with me, was the attorney for their historical society, and they have a building by the railroad in Hicksville. That's not as old as this building. The Jackson family is very historical, and the gravesite, the grave there, the graveyard, when I was in the Veteran Service Agency back in the late 70s, they asked me to check out that, see if there's any veterans there, and it was slaves were buried in that graveyard, and they were laying down, and the grass was going over it, and scouts came and they cleaned it up, and they tried to, make it where you can see it would be a historical site. This is all part of that historical site, and so you agree with that? The only one question I had is the building department usually tears down new houses that are infested with, rats and kids that go drinking there because they're not going to get, that doesn't happen in this building, correct?
No.
Okay, well then I have no problem with it at all. Thank you, Josh.
May I just add some of the letters of support, like our state assemblyman, Dave McDonough?
Sure, you can hand those up, and you can note right now that you're handing up letters of support from the people that you're handing them up from.
We'll make copies of it so
If you want to state for the record that you have letters of support from whoever it is, you can do that right now.
These were all presented to...
But we have, excuse me, we have a lot of members here from the community, and that church would like to speak, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Next, we have Christian Brown.
Good morning, Supervisor and members. Christian Brown, son Ward Kashignano, PLLC 333, Earl Ovington Boulevard, Suite 601, Uniondale. I'm appearing for the Episcopal Diocese of Long Island, which owns the property. I know we only have a limited time. First of all, the diocese opposes the landmark status. I also want to point out that similar to the last application, this application, in my opinion, suffers from the same procedural defect. The hearing was not held within 90 days. I understand we have a difference of opinion about whether that is a jurisdictional defect. I would just read to you one sentence. If the Commission approves an application, the Town Board shall call a public hearing within 90 days of the date of the approval pursuant to Section D of this section. It says you shall do that, so I don't understand the opinion that was given earlier, so I'm noting that for the record. And I also note for the record that after my office's review of the file, it does not appear that the required notification mailing was done to the 200-foot radius. I don't know whether that's true. I don't know if there's an affidavit of mailing somewhere else, but I'd ask the board to attend to that. If the mailing was not done, then I think it's undisputed that it's a defective procedure. Briefly to the merits, I gave Ms. Hanson an exhibit. There's some confusion and conflation going on here. The church that has been referred to as this historic African-American church is not this church, it's not this site. There was another site shown on the map about a half a mile away where there was an African-American Methodist, an AME congregation, not an Episcopal congregation. Later became a Baptist congregation, apparently, dating from the 1840s. That church burned down in the 1890s at a different site. So whether that other site had historic significance, it's near Oakfield Cemetery, whether it was affiliated with the Underground Railroad, we don't know. But it's not that site, it's not this church. That was a different congregation. This church was erected, as we've said, in the early 1900s, and yes, it probably did at the time serve a predominantly African-American population. There are at least 8 Episcopal churches on Long Island that serve historic, predominantly African-American congregations today that are still extant. So it's not unique in that sense in any regard. It has struggled as a parish, as a church, since at least the 1940s. The Episcopal Diocese first tried to close it in 1942. It was never erected canonically as an Episcopal parish, meaning it was a mission church that could not support itself financially, and it was never able to support itself financially. And it remained in that position from the 40s through the 60s, when someone else mentioned there was another battle to close it, okay? After 1976, the Episcopal Church never stopped sending priests to this site, okay? So it was essentially left on its own. In the last 40 years, it has had tenant congregations, the last 2 of whom have failed and have left the church without rent and forced them to have to evict people. So there is no congregation here. Whether there was years ago, black, white, or otherwise, it doesn't exist anymore, right? And what you're going to do by landmarking this, because unlike, say, the movie theater, which in theory could be used for different purposes inside, if you preserve this, it is a church, and the Episcopal Diocese will have to maintain this church with no congregation in perpetuity, because you really can't repurpose a church for anything other than some sort of religious use. And some representatives of the diocese will speak in a moment. My final point is, as I pointed out to the Landmark Commission, and I don't think this is disputed, it has no architectural adornment or any sort of unique style. It is a plain white building. It doesn't even have stained glass windows. When I mentioned that to the Landmark Commission, they turned that around to say, oh, it's an example of plain architecture. Well, I don't think it can be so subjective. This is an old church. That's really all there is to it. It's an old church that hasn't had an active congregation with the Episcopal Diocese for over 40 years. And landmarking will impose a substantial burden on the Episcopal Diocese, which needs to redevelop it, so it has the money to support its own parishes that are active. Thank you very much.
I just have one quick question.
Yes.
What is happening at that structure right now? Anything?
Nothing right now. As was noted earlier, and I think this is also instructive for the board's consideration, the diocese was looking to sell it, and so after 100 years, when the for sale signs went up, that's what caused someone to want to landmark it. There was a squatter congregation in there for a long time, went through a long battle to get them out. They are now out, and it's now just a vacant site.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you very much.
Next, Alfred Thompson.
Mrs. Thompson, are you here?
He stepped out for a moment.
Oh, he stepped out.
Lawton, Brian?
Good morning. My name is Lawton Bryant, 39 Green Avenue in Amityville, New York. I come here to certainly rebut what the attorney just said. He was so far off base. First of all, he said it was a squatter congregation. It was never a squatter congregation. The congregation always stayed intact. It went down to 3 members in 2008 because the diocese failed to send a pastor there for X number of years. The congregation came to me. When the congregation came to me and I took over as pastor, we went in 2008 until the courts made a decision. We went from 3 members to 120 members. Those are not squatters, okay? If the diocese really was serious about this being a church, they would have locked into us and they would have continued to work with us, but they didn't care about that. I just wanted to set the record straight there. Let's tell the truth if we're going to sit before this committee. This has always been a Native American, African American church, but it always was a community church. There was also a lot of white members in the church also, okay? Now, for us to sit here, any of us to sit here, to say that a building that has been in existence from 1904 up until present time to not be landmarked, I think is a travesty. The building should have always been landmarked. I was there for 10 years, okay? In 10 years, no matter what went wrong in that building, we always made sure that we took it apart, fixed it, and put it back together exactly the way it was. We spent great money. I heard the lawyer talking about the congregation didn't have money. He don't know that. He's just saying something, whatever, okay? We always had money. We always had bank accounts. We always was vibrant. What happened is, if you take and don't send a leader, the people will scatter. So the people scattered. Once a leader came back in there, the people came back in droves. It was vibrant. The church put on community festivals. The church put on community events. The church was active in the community. The church did everything that a church supposed to do in a committee. It lacked nothing. So I just come to rebut what this gentleman is saying, because it's obvious that he never came there and he really didn't know what he was talking about squatters.
Thank you, sir. Thompson, come back.
Thompson, 400 North Newbridge Road, Levittown.
Good morning.
I don't really have a lot to say, except that I am very much in favor of the church. I have also met some of the members previously, and I was there at a book signing when the the final closing of the property. But I am thoroughly in support of landmarking it. I'm also a past trustee and president of Water Preservation Society, and I'm sure the members of there are also very much in favor of it. And I just thank everybody else for the strong support, and I'm praying that we go through with this and everybody approves of it. And final note, a young note to everybody.
Now, you were on the 40th and the 50th anniversary committees of Levittown, correct?
Yes,
I remember you were a lot younger then. Me too.
Okay. Anyway, thank you all very much.
Dennis was one of the original congregants of that.
Paul Daly.
Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Daly, and I'm a resident of Belmore, almost lifelong resident of Belmore with very little exception. Here today, actually not to get involved with the politics of ownership of the building and such, I'm here as an architectural historian. I hold a BA degree in Historic Preservation and American Culture Studies from Roger Williams University, Bristol, Rhode Island. As I said, I'm a Belmore resident. I live at 745 Sunrise Avenue in Belmore. Quite familiar with the building, having spent a good deal of my life in the area. I want to dispute what the attorney actually said about not having any style. It actually does have style. And in fact, as an architectural historian who has been at my profession for almost 38 years now, I'm currently employed as a landmarks preservationist with the New York City Parks Department. It most definitely has style. It's called the shingle style, and it has some slight Queen Anne touches as well. To the untrained eye, it doesn't look like it has any style, but it does. And the proportions are really, really perfect. It has nice Gothic revival windows, touches of windows. Of course, it doesn't have stained glass windows and some of the other fancy things. I said this at one of the previous Landmark Commission meetings. We're not talking about St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue. We're talking about a building that was built at the turn of the century, of the turn of the 20th century, in a rural farming community. But we know it's a church. When we go by, we know it's a church. You don't even have to have the cross on the bell tower to know that it stands as a church. Can it be reused for something else? Absolutely. One of the projects that I was involved with the New York City Parks Department, we turned a morgue into a recreation center and kept some of the fittings from the morgue. So it's entirely possible. In fact, I found even online, I have an illustration here, just quickly. It's a little hard to see because I'm sorry I didn't blow it up, but this is an illustration of a rendering of a church in Australia, which was turned into a community center. And they added on to it, on the side, they made a conversation pit out front here with a fireplace. So it's entirely possible to repurpose the building for a new use and yet preserve the facade of the building, which is really important. Again, the details are there. It's original. It has a wonderful rose window in the front, which is suggesting Gothic cathedrals of Europe. It has a tripartite window arrangement at the rear of the building, which I have a photo of. This feature right here, okay? So, but again, the massing, the moldings, everything is there, waiting to be preserved. So I'm fully in support of the building becoming a landmark. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. David Bernacci?
Good morning. My name is David Bernacci, 62 Linden Boulevard, Hempstead, New York, and I'm here in support of the becoming a landmark. I know it's a whole other process, but my interest is having Pets for Love, which I've talked to you about the rescue, actually be able to purchase the property, turn it into a rescue and partial sanctuary, but keeping the church as a church, turning a small part of the inside into a thrift store for the community, and keeping a part of the church as a religious structure to have the clergy come in, and the president pastor of there is, would be also part of it, but having days for people to come and having their pets blessed.
You should talk to Mr. Brown afterwards. Maybe he has a client who wants to sell it to you.
Yes. But it can be, in arguing with Mr. Brown, it can be repurposed. As Pets for Love, it would be a rescue for the community. We have our programs for helping the vets and the elderly with financial costs on their pets, dealing with injured pets, and just it would become a beautiful thing, remaining for the community, and the church would still be used partly as a church. So I just wanted to let you guys be aware that there is a way to repurpose it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bernacci. And Mr. Brown's right over there. He's waving his hand. Matthew Susko?
Hi guys, a little stage fright, my first time speaking in this venue, but nice to meet you. I'm grateful for the town board, also grateful for Josh and Mike Hartopoulos and the previous help and advice they gave me for St. John of Jerusalem preservation. My name is Matt Susko.
I'm a lifelong resident of Wanto, New York, 2928 Mandalay Beach Road, Wanto, New York. I'm a trustee for the Wanto Preservation Society. I'm here officially representing the Board of Trustees of the Society. In July of 2018, the Board of Trustees voted overwhelmingly to support the application to grant the town of Hempstead landmark status to the historic St. Matthias Church. The Society presented at the Town of Hempstead Landmark Commission meetings that were held on this issue. The Society's views are therefore part of the record. The Town of Hempstead has previously granted landmark status to the Jerusalem Quaker Meeting House and the St. John of Jerusalem Chapel, thereby preserving parts of the religious history of early European settlement in the Wanto area. The Society hopes the town will also grant landmark status to St. Matthias Church likewise, so that the African American history of the area can also be preserved. Sorry, technology. Okay, and recognized. Thank you. Just to add to that, the St. Matthias Church, located on Jerusalem Avenue in a region formerly known as the Brush, is a staple of the African American heritage of Wanto, which many residents are not aware of, as well as a staple of the Native American history of the town of Hempstead and African American history of the town of Hempstead. The population of the Brush were predominantly former slaves, descendants of slaves, and Civil War veterans, heroes. I personally like Pets of Love's idea. I'm an animal lover and owner myself, but I feel it's proper for me to present the plans to the Wanto Preservation Society to digest it properly. And I hope the nearby community would be in favor of their organization's sincere intentions and plans as long as they want to preserve it properly. And that's pretty much it. I'm grateful for the town board's help, and so Ms. Woosby's question about the old burial ground that's still there down the block, and it's just part of everything that's important, and it's necessary for the young people and everyone to know about this. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sesko. Get together with Mr. Bernacci. There you go, get together with him.
Okay, thank you.
Natalie Naylor.
Thank you. I'm Natalie Naylor. I live at 496 Clarendon Road in Uniondale, New York. I'm a retired Hofstra University professor. I taught Long Island history, and I am also president of the Nassau County Historical Society. And I'm not going to try to repeat things that have been said here before, but I would mention that the St. Matthias Church, I am speaking in support of the landmarking, and St. Matthias Church was included in a very significant exhibition that the Long Island Museum in Stony Brook had last spring. The title was, let's see, Long Road to Freedom, Surviving Slavery on Long Island. It is also pictured in a book that was published by the Long Island Studies Institute at Hofstra, and in an appendix on early African American churches. I understand that in the 1920s, the Episcopal Diocese was interested in this church, took it over because they wanted to protect the people there from Ku Klux Klan activities. And that's an aspect of our history we would rather forget, but I think it's important that that be remembered, as well as the history of African Americans. And I would love to see the town of Hempstead perhaps using that church building to interpret some of that history. That would be a great way of repurposing as well. There have been other proposals, and of course financing is always an issue, and the most appropriate one. But thank you for your time listening.
Thank you for speaking. I'm a class of 79 from Hofstra, and thank God I didn't have you. You probably would tell them how bad my grades were. If you have any historical all the stuff on this church, would you get it to my office? We'd like to have a good file, solid file. So if in fact this ever happens again, somebody wants to do something with the property, we have a proper file of
Right, I think probably Gary Hammond's, what he has submitted, and Joshua Soren, it includes, I know there's information in the Long Island Studies Institute at Hofstra on the brush, and so on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mills.
Professor, can I ask you a question on a different subject that we talked about previous?
Sure.
So I've tried to research General George Washington's trip through Long Island and specifically along Hempstead Turnpike. There was very little on the internet on that particular excursion. So I would ask that maybe you could look into it with some of your other scholars so that we can get a better understanding of why he was here, what he was doing here, what his impressions were of Long Island, if they're recorded anywhere.
They are recorded in his journal. He doesn't name the name of the road he went on, but I reprinted the Long Island as a portion of his journal in a book called Journeys on Old Long Island that I edited for the Long Island Studies Institute. You can read that account with...
Where can I get that?
Go buy her book, Councilman Blake.
Maybe you can give it to me as a birthday present.
All right, Professor, we'll talk. Heiko Cornelissen?
Hi, for having me. My name is Heiko Cornelissen. I'm the real estate manager of the Diocese of Long Island. We own about 130 some churches on the island. The churches are obviously the way we serve our communities.
I'm sorry, you represent the Episcopal Diocese, is that correct?
I'm the real estate manager at the diocese.
Thank you.
The Episcopal Diocese of Long Island, who owns the church. The churches are, of course, how we serve our communities. Some do better, some less so. St. Matthias has been doing not that great for the last couple of decades. Even since the 70s, there's no Episcopal congregation. The pastor that spoke earlier was not part of the Episcopal Diocese. We let them serve their congregation in our building. Even though they didn't pay rent, we let them continue. When we close or when we especially sell churches, we do not take this lightly. But we had to conclude after decades of struggling that this church has not been able to fulfill the mission that we have set out to do, and that's to serve the community spiritually and through community services. And so that's why we had to let this go, especially because we do not have unlimited resources. If we were to landmark this church, it's going to be a burden on the church as a whole, and it's money that we would like to use for other communities that where we have churches that are part of providing the services within the community where we were not able to do that in this case. I also like to note that as the lawyer had commented, there seemed to be a lot of emotion related to the architecture of the church itself, and also related to the different location that was noted. The original location of the original church is about half a mile down of where the current church is. So we would be more than happy to also think about solutions outside the box where the church could be sold for $1, be moved to location at the expense of the seller to reunite the original church with the current structure that is there to be landmarked. Because we need the financial means that this would give us. We need those in order to provide that to to the other communities throughout Long Island.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ra, is that something that would be, if this church is given landmark status, and say everybody came together and agreed to relocate the church to the burial ground, is that something that legally we'd be committed to do?
If they agree, if everybody agrees, it'd be fine.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that we close the hearing and adopt the item.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakely? Aye. Councilman Diaz-Pazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby?
And I think it's worth preserving some of the history of the people who actually were the ones who were the backbone of this country.
Councilman Muscarella?
Before I say aye, I'd like to acknowledge and take note that people of the Garden City South and Franklin Square, people like Margaret Kelly and Kathy are still here in attendance. I think that says a lot about preserving the property that we need to preserve. I'm going to say yes and thank you for your support or your being here.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
The item passed.
Proposed handicap parking on public streets in Belmore, East Atlantic Beach, East Meadow, Elmont, Garden City South, New Lynbrook, Uniondale, New Valley Street.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Supervisor, I move that the public hearing be closed and that the item be adopted.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakely? Councilman Diaz-Pazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Muscarella?
Madam Clerk, please call the next public hearing.
Proposed revised public parking field maps in Oceanside.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and proposed revised public parking field maps be adopted.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby? Councilman Muscarella?
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Authorizing the conveyance of a vacant commercial parcel of land located at 19 and 23 Debevoise Avenue, Section 55, Block 415, Lots 1 and 2, to Parabit Realty LLC for development and construction of a commercial structure pursuant to Roosevelt Urban Renewal Plan, Phase 2 in Roosevelt.
Okay, on this public hearing, I have a slip from John Moss.
Good morning. Happy birthday, Councilman Blakeman.
Good morning, Mr. Moss.
My name is John Moss. I am from John K. Moss, PC, attorneys for the Department of Planning and Economic Development.
Mr. Moss, could you just move the mic a little closer to you?
Today, the department is presenting to the board a contract with Parabit Realty LLC to sell the premises known as 19 and 23 Debevoise Avenue, New York, redevelopment to assist in the expansion of operations of Parabit Systems, Inc., which conducts operations at the adjacent parcel located at 35 Debevoise Avenue, Roosevelt. The facility at 35 Debevoise Avenue houses manufacturing operations of Parabit Systems, which engages in electronic manufacturing of security and self-service solutions. Parabit Systems, Inc. current headquarters is located at 2699 Grand Avenue in Belmore, New York. The subject premises were acquired utilizing CDBG funds by the Town of Hempstead Department of Planning in accordance with the Urban Renewal Plan Phase 2 for Roosevelt. The department published a request for proposals on February 16th, seeking proposals to purchase the property and other commercial properties as well. Parabit Realty LLC responded by proposal dated March 30, 2018. The proposal submitted indicated that its acquisition and redevelopment at the site, among other things, will prevent Parabit Systems
relocation of manufacturing operations to another community, preserve current jobs at the Parrot Systems in Roosevelt facility, and potentially create 13 new jobs in the envisioned expanded facility. All of the above factors are included in the urban renewal plan, which we acquired the property for. I had the pleasure of attending a community meeting hosted by City Councilwoman Gooseby. I believe the community was well in support of Parrot. They're good neighbors. As the property was acquired in accordance with the urban renewal plan, we feel that this use coincides with the community development as a whole in Roosevelt. I know there are some representatives of Parrot here. If you have any questions about their operations, anything of that nature.
Well, I'd like to say one thing. I'm very, very proud of Parrot. They have many of the residents who lived in Roosevelt employed there. They do wonderful work. I like going to the airport and looking at the collages, the kiosks, and see that I know that Parrot made them, and you train a lot of young people. So, and they work there during the summer. It's really been a very, very good asset for Roosevelt. And I know that you need this land. You've tried for many times. No one else, bid it for it. So I certainly am in favor of this property being given, sold to Parrot.
Thank you, Mr. Moss.
Thank you.
Next, we have Daniel Baker.
Good afternoon, Supervisor, members of the board. My name is Daniel Baker. I represent Parabit. I'm from Serpillion, Ballynether, and Hyman, 90 Merrick Avenue, East Meadow, New York, 11554. And only if you have any questions about the project or the operation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Richard Kirk.
Hi, Richard Kick. I represent Parrot Realty and employed at Parrot Realty, and I can answer any questions related to the project.
I don't think we have any questions. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to be heard on this public hearing? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the application approved.
Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Gillen.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman. Aye. Councilman Diaz-Pazino. Aye. Councilman Dunn. Aye. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby.
Aye.
Councilman
Thank you, board. I'm really very proud of this. Thank you.
Councilman Muscarella.
Aye.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
To consider authorizing the Town of Hempstead Sanitary District Number 6 to sell at auction surplus machinery and equipment.
I do not have any slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to be heard? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move that the public hearing be closed and the authorization granted.
Second motion.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pazino.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby.
Aye.
Councilman Muscarella.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, please call our next public hearing.
Application of 7-Eleven Inc. to permit and demolish the two existing one-story buildings and construct a new one-story, 2,580 feet of convenience store with fuel canopy, 4 multiple product dispensers, providing 8 fueling stations and associated underground tanks, additional site work for parking and landscaping, and a trash enclosure in North Belmont.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Gillen, members of the board. William Benesso for Shelley D. Tarana, 333 Earl Ovington Boulevard, Uniondale, New York, here on behalf of the applicant, 7-Eleven Inc. Seated to my right is Mr. Paul Going of Atlantic Traffic, affiliated with Bowler Engineering, the site engineering firm for this project. Mr. Going is a transportation engineer who's been recognized by this board in the past as a traffic and transportation expert and been given permission to provide opinion testimony in connection with the applications before the board. I would ask that the board grant that same status to Mr. Goins today. I've asked Ms. Hanson to hand out to you each a copy of several documents that will just help you to get an overview of the site and the project itself. 7-Eleven is proposing this application which relates to property situated on the northeast corner of Belmore Avenue and Jerusalem Avenue in North Belmore. It's comprised of two lots, 2663 and 2675 Jerusalem Avenue. The property previously was used, the corner portion of the property was previously, for decades, a gasoline service station with a service and repair business as well. It had 6 fueling positions. It had 3 service and repair bays. That operation shut down sometime last year, I'm told. The property to the east of that was, which is 2675, was the site of a large commercial building, which was a millwork building. It was a building that did custom cabinetry and other such materials, fabrication and manufacture. It occupied almost the entire lot, left very little room for any parking. That building has since been demolished. What 7-Eleven is proposing to do is occupy both lots, create one overall parcel out of it.
Mr. Vanessa, I'm sorry to interrupt. So just the photos that we have here, so this building now has been demolished, correct?
I was under the impression that it had been removed. Okay, then I apologize.
I'm just trying to get an understanding of what we're looking at. So on the corner is Simonelli Motors.
Right.
And now there's the commercial building next door is to be demolished, or?
It's to be demolished.
Okay.
Correct. The 7-Eleven project would propose the demolition of all the present buildings on the site, the removal of the old tanks that have been in the ground for some time, and to redevelop the site with, as referenced, just under a 2,600 square foot 7-Eleven convenience store, which is about 600 square feet less than the 7-Eleven convenience store that is situated diagonally across Jerusalem Avenue from this property, which is being relocated to this property. They're going to move the operation and the franchise to this property. In doing so, they would construct a new canopy, put new state-of-the-art double-walled underground storage tanks on the property. They will landscape the property. They'll provide additional beautification of the property. They're also going to be modifying the curb cut, the access points to the property. Right now, there are 5 curb cuts serving the 2 properties, 3 on Jerusalem, 2 on Belmore Road. This project would reduce the total curb cuts to 1 on Belmore Road, 1 on Jerusalem Avenue, and move them further away from the intersection, which is certainly something that the county would like to see and is typically considered to be good planning. The property, the access on Jerusalem Avenue would be right turn in, right turn out only. We would accept a restriction to that effect on that. Now, again, this is really, to describe it, as really a relocation of an existing operation. 7-Eleven is already in the area. It's on the parcel of property diagonally across the street. Moving it to this, as you'll hear from Mr. Going in greater detail, moving it to this corner places it at a signalized intersection, which makes for a better and safer traffic flow, better and safer traffic circulation, both on the local roads and entering and exiting the property. This site will also have room for deliveries to occur on the premises. At the present 7-Eleven, many deliveries of the larger type occur on the street and generates some parking and traffic congestion.
Mr. Vanessa, can I just ask a question? These tanks, are they behind the Simonelli Motors building, or are these tanks?
Those tanks, I think, they're still there. Yeah, they're to be removed.
Okay. But are there underground storage tanks on this site already?
As I understand, there are old underground storage tanks presently situated there.
Have you done any testing to see if there's any remediation necessary at this site?
Didn't you state you were removing them? Isn't that what you're beginning?
Yeah, they will be removed. The property will be completely remediated. I don't know if any testing has been done to date, but certainly if this application is approved, 7-Eleven will remove those tanks under the supervision of all necessary local and municipal authorities. They will remove them appropriately, and then new tanks will go in. And again, they will be state-of-the-art, double-walled fiberglass tanks with the monitors on them, so that if there's a breach in any of the walls, they're notified. So it'll actually represent a significant improvement to the safety of the site.
Are you aware of any leakage from them?
I am not aware of any leakage. I think I would have heard something from 7-Eleven if that had been determined, but I have not heard anything.
And if in fact they do find that there is leakage, the 7-Eleven will be responsible for the cleanup and the plume and all that.
The redevelopment of the site would require the complete cleanup of any environmental hazardous conditions. And if that was going to be, if 7-Eleven was going to proceed, if it was approved by this board, then yes, that would be the responsibility of the redevelopment.
The reason I ask is what the Navy did with that page. You know, we don't want that happening in Belmont.
Obviously. As indicated, the site will this will represent a redevelopment of the site. It has been used for gasoline service for many years. It's underlying Business X district, so the 7-Eleven use aspect of this is an as-of-right use. This is simply to combine the two uses. That's why we're here, because of the GSS provisions, which require us to come before this board for the gasoline service station use. The project will probably employ 10 to 12 permanent employees over the course of each work cycle. The total employees, there will typically be 2 on site, and perhaps 3 on site at busier times. There will always be a person available to pump gas for anyone who needs assistance with doing that. There will be, I've already discussed with 7-Eleven, if they could put a flagpole on the site. They indicated that they could.
You've been coming here long enough, Mr. Bonesso.
Yes, ma'am.
They could or they will?
They will. They could, they can, and they will. They will most likely, they haven't determined exactly where yet. It would most likely be in the southeastern portion of the property. Also, the fueling, the size of the lot will provide for very good site circulation, as you'll hear from Mr. Going, and for sufficient parking for the subject property. Now, we did submit a landscape plan. I received word from Mr. Bocella with some suggested enhancements to that, which I've talked to 7-Eleven about, and we will implement those enhancements to the site, to the landscape plan. So now, if I may, I would like to have Mr. Going provide his testimony.
Before I ask that, I'd like to ask a question, please. This is, on the back of this, I see home, residence home, right?
Correct.
What do you do to shield that from your?
I didn't hear you.
What do you do to shield the homes from this new infrastructure that you're putting on?
Landscaping and fencing. And I became aware today of some residents who have some concerns about this. I spoke to them briefly. I advised them that just because we're having the hearing today doesn't mean that we can't talk about this some more. I intend to meet with them and try to address their concerns. I can't promise them that 7-Eleven is going away, but I can talk to them about enhanced fencing, enhanced landscaping, perhaps relocating certain things on site. That's something that, as this board knows, I'm always active with the community on. If I had known in advance, when I send out the notice, I send out a letter giving a little bit more detail than the notice provides. And in my letter, I indicate if anyone has concerns or would like to discuss it, to please call me. We can set up a meeting, whatever the case may be. I didn't hear from anyone. So, but again, that, like I told them, that doesn't mean that we can't discuss this after the hearing and try to come to some arrangements with regard to some things. Can't guarantee everything, but can certainly try.
Mr. Vanessa, so is 7-Eleven own the millwork property, that structure?
Do they own the what?
The adjacent properties. They own this lot and this lot?
They're leasing both properties. and they lease the property diagonally across the street, that they have under lease until 2027, they will, unless the landlord were to let them out of their lease, which is unlikely, they would attempt to release that property to another user. It wouldn't be a gas station, it wouldn't be a 7-Eleven or a convenience market, but they would attempt to release it, and they would be responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of that property throughout
That's the normal course of 7-Eleven is to lease property. I know there was a gas station in Levittown that they leased the property. They didn't purchase it, they leased it. And is that normal for 7-Eleven to lease properties?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, I imagine they have some property that they own, probably ones that that 7-Eleven operates themselves as opposed to a franchise, but I think most of their properties are leased.
And it kind of keeps you on your toes because you don't own it. Okay.
So if I may, I'd have Mr. Going provide his testimony, and then I'll sum up on the direct presentation.
Thank you. My name is Paul Going. It's spelled G-O-I-N-G, just like the word going. I work for Atlantic Craft and Design Engineering, located in Hopkog. So I'm going to go over some of the things Bill just mentioned, but the existing condition, you have the former gas station. It had 3 pumps, 6 fueling positions, and 3 service bays. Then we have the former millwork on the second lot in from the corner. So currently there are 3 driveways on Jerusalem Avenue, which is also State Route 105. Those 3 driveways, there's 2 at the former gas station, 1 at the millwork. Then on Belmore Road, there are 2 driveways that the gas station had. So a total of 5 driveways being reduced to 3 by the project, being reduced to 2, 1 on each frontage by the project is a significant improvement and a benefit to the traveling public. Bill mentioned there's an existing 7-Eleven diagonally southwest of the site. It's on the southwest corner of the intersection of George Road. That's about 3,200 square feet, just a convenience store. There's no gas service there. So 7-Eleven would vacate that store. They construct an approximately 2,600 square foot store with 8 gasoline fueling positions on the combined properties at the northeast corner with Belmore Road. So it's about 600 square feet smaller than the existing store. It would relocate the use, which is a convenience use, to the signalized corner, and that's really a better location for the use, where it can better serve people who are looking to make a stop on their way from one place to another. The project is also going to install pedestrian traffic signal equipment on the site corner and at the southeast corner of the signalized intersection. That was something that the DOT requested, and 7-Eleven has agreed to do that. So to analyze the traffic of the proposed 7-Eleven, we counted traffic at the signalized intersection on Thursday, June 21st, 2018. From 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And that's because convenience store use like this, their busiest times of day are when people are on the road and making stops on their way from one place to another. We found the morning peak hour to occur from 7:45 a.m. to 8:45 a.m. and the evening peak hour from 4:45 p.m. to 5:45 p.m. During the same time periods that we counted that intersection, we also counted traffic and observed parking at the existing 7-Eleven store. And we took the data we collected at the 7-Eleven store and we compared it to data that's published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, also called the ITE, in a publication called Trip Generation. In the latest 10th edition, 2017, it has trip generation rates for a wide variety of uses, including convenience stores and including convenience stores with gas. So when we compared the trip generation of the existing 7-Eleven to the ITE trip generation, we found that it was actually lower. It was 72 to 77% of the traffic that is predicted by the ITE. So it's not a very busy location right now. Parking demand was only about 84% of what the ITE predicts in a separate publication called parking generation. So we calculated the number of trips that would be generated at the proposed location based on ITE. So it may be a little conservative in this particular location, but what we calculated for the size of the store and the number of pumps is about 53 weekday morning customers and 64 weekday evening customers in the peak hour. But not all of them are new trips. As I said before, it's convenience use. About 2/3 of the customers are people who are passing by already. So somebody stopping to get gas or milk on their way home, or somebody stopping for a cup of coffee, a newspaper, something like that on their way to work. So only about 20 weekday morning and 22 weekday evening peak hour customers are actually new. We then took the traffic volumes we observed and we increased them by 1% growth rate. The DOT publishes a growth rate of 0.6% for Hempstead, but we bumped it up a little bit further, and we analyzed the traffic signal and the site driveways in the future with and without the project. And we found no changes in level of service and no traffic impacts to the proposed project. And just to clarify, for that assumption, we didn't take away the trips that currently go to the existing 7-Eleven. Those are still in the network. We're assuming that that's going to be reoccupied by something else. So based on that traffic analysis, I can conclude that the project will not have a significant negative impact on traffic. We also looked at the parking. The convenience store use requires 1 parking stall per 200 square feet, which is 5 per 1,000. 13 parking stalls are therefore required for the approximately 2,600 square foot proposed convenience store. We proposed 9 stalls at the site, so it's a 4-stall variance will be required. So again, we observed the parking rate at the existing 7-Eleven. We found 3.16 per 1,000 square feet, which is 35 to 40% lower than the requirement, and then we applied that observed rate to the new store and came up with a maximum demand for 9 stalls, which we have. But we also have the 8 fueling positions. It's typical at convenience stores where there's gasoline service available. Some customers come for gas and come to use the store. Some customers just come for gas, some just come for the store. But customers who are buying fuel and also making an in-store purchase, they don't need an additional parking space. They leave their car at the pump typically. So with the 9 stalls that we have striped, the 8 fueling positions, we can actually accommodate 17 cars. And in my opinion, we have more than adequate parking for the use. So to summarize, in my opinion, we have more than enough parking. The project reduces the number of driveways from 5 to 2, which is a significant improvement. The project eliminates the driveways that are closest to the signalized intersection, which is a significant improvement. The project will improve pedestrian accessibility at the intersection with the addition of pedestrian crossing equipment and a crosswalk from the northeast to the southeast corner. And the project locates a convenience use on a corner where it can more conveniently serve customers who can come in, come out without having as much impact on the roadway system. Again, we only would generate 20 to 22 new peak hour customers, and we find that traffic operations wouldn't be impacted. The site is laid out with plenty of space for vehicle maneuvers and enough space for the fueling truck as well as the delivery truck to get on and off the site without any problem. And that completes my testimony. Unless there's any questions.
Just to finish up, the 7-Eleven will use private sanitation, which means they can control the days and hours of pickup and delivery. They can In that way, pickup. In that way, they can make sure that they're not coming on the site late at night or early in the morning. They would agree to put appropriate restrictions on that. And other than that, again, this is a site that has been used for gasoline service station in the past. It's a use in the 7-Eleven that is unconditionally permitted on this site. So consequently, we feel that the redevelopment is appropriate for this business-owned property, and based upon the testimony of the traffic expert, will not have any negative impacts on the surrounding roadways or on traffic hazard or congestion. We ask that the board consider that. And other than that, I would just like the ability to respond to the public comment that comes in.
Thank you, Mr. Bonesso. I have a slip from Eric Meyer. Are you here to? Are you here in support of the applicant?
Supervisor, I'm the engineer for the applicant here to address the questions.
Okay, thank you. Michelle Cass.
My name is Michelle Cass, K-A-S-S. I live at 103 Doris Avenue, North Belmore, New York, 11710. I do not have anything prepared. My house butts up right up against the 7-Eleven and the gas station. The gentleman said that he did send us letters prior to this meeting today, but the diagram of where everything would be was not with that letter. I saw that this morning when he showed it to us. I have lived there for 40 years, and I have seen many companies come and go. However, we have never had anything with food, and it's the 7-Eleven that really concerns me because they sell food. The dumpster butts right up against to my backyard, and I'm extremely concerned about rodents and bugs.
Mr. Bonesso, is there a way we could maybe move, your client would move the dumpster so it's not right abutting an adjacent residential property?
That's one of the things I was going to speak to 7-Eleven about. I was advised of that this morning, of that concern this morning.
Okay. Also, yes, it has been a gas station since the day I moved in, but the gas station is not open 24/7, which this is going to be. Also, there were not as many stations as they want to have. So those are basically the things that concern me. I have neighbors here that have other concerns. I know going up against a company like 7-Eleven is probably an utter waste of time with their fancy attorneys and their traffic studies, which mean absolutely nothing because I live there and I see the traffic. Sorry to say this gentleman is totally inaccurate. And I'm sure you're going to vote for them because they have a lot more money than I do, but those are my concerns, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Cass. I will say that we do very much care about the concerns of our residents, and that's why we're here listening.
As far as the dumpster goes, can you put like a cinder block, L shape, so they can still pick the thing up and empty it, but it won't be really visible, and maybe outside that L shape cinder block walls, you put bushes up or arborvitaes or something that'll, the neighborhood won't see it or smell it.
The dumpster would be enclosed no matter what. If we can relocate it to another location, we will certainly landscape it as you suggested, enclose it, landscape it as you suggested.
Thank you.
And even if we can't relocate it, it will be landscaped and enclosed as you suggested.
Excellent. It's an ugly sight seeing dumpsters and you know, the odor can, even though it's not open food that you're selling, it's still, neighbors have to be, you have to be a good neighbor, put that way.
Okay, next we have Michael Park. James Laurie.
Yeah, how you doing? My name is James Laurie. I own the two properties on Jerusalem Avenue next to the building that wasn't knocked down yet. My first question is, they keep saying that they own the land, and to get to this hearing, don't they have to own all the land? Because I happen to know it's a... Yeah, but the property next to my house has not been sold yet. It's going to be sold upon what happens with this hearing. So don't they have to own everything before they get to this part, or no?
That's for the, for the one that happened in my community, the guy was up in the air, the guy owned the gas station until everything was done, and his life was in shambles until he found out what he was going to do with his property. So it hasn't, this is just normal course of business.
Okay, I understand.
It's terrible, I know, it really puts everybody in a quandary, but this is normal course of business, but it's...
Yes.
Mr. Laurie, is this your property? Are you?
Yes.
Thank you.
And the one next door also. Yeah, I've been in this community paying, real estate taxes for 40 years, almost 40. My concern is them actually coming into my lot, my next to the building, which they've done in the past, going to 7-Eleven, and yeah, how will they stop that? Stopping all the time, they still do in front of my driveways, blocking us from getting in and out. I know the guy was telling us about, traffic, but I don't think he's got a clue about the traffic. I mean, a few years ago we had fatalities on my property and the one next door. I know because I cleaned it all up, and it was on the news. So it's a busy street, and especially during rush hours. Now it was different. Yeah, they say there was a gas station on the corner, but those cars were going one way, and 7-Eleven traffic was going the other way. Now everything's going to be going the same way, which in my eyes, it's only going to be worse. I looked at the parking. They have 8 spots and 1 handicap. Don't think that's enough. Also, there's 2 spots in front of the container, which we've already talked about the container, but if they're going to pick up the container when it's not the middle of the night, there's most likely going to be cars there, if you know what I mean. That's pretty much it. The dumpster is against my property also. I am concerned with the rodents. Hopefully he'll take care of that. One of my other concerns is I'm in commercial building. We build stuff. A lot of the new stuff has refrigeration units for all their refrigeration and freezer units on the roof. They're going to be on all the time. How can they stop that noise from coming to the residential area?
Mr. Vanesso, if you could just answer a couple of these questions. Is there going to be some kind of, boundary? Like, are you going to put a fence behind it so you don't encroach on Mr. Laurie's property?
Yes, we can certainly put a wall, a fence, whatever the case may be, to separate the properties. And right now, the plan is to not only put a fence, but to also landscape along that eastern property line.
Would that be something that you'd be interested in, Mr. Laurie?
Yeah, that's fine. But again, if they could move that container, because believe me, if that's going to...
Say it's going to move container to a better area.
No, if they could do that, that would be good. But again, the traffic is a big thing, and the noise from the air conditioning units.
The air conditioner, some kind of buffer, because I know that they put, again, back to my own hometown, right up the block of my house, there was a car dealership, and they turned it into a swimming pool area, and they got the water pumps and air conditioning right next to the senior housing, and they complain all the time about the noise of the air conditioning unit. So I think we're going to have to address that with the constituents in the area, people who live in the area. Again, being a good neighbor, you'll work with them to try to find something that will make it comfortable and make you a good neighbor if in fact you're able to secure this. Is that correct?
Thank you. And also,
and you'll give them your card so they can talk to you about this.
Oil tanks were, gas tanks were removed.
Thank you. James Ollie?
Let me answer the question about them getting in touch with the community.
I indicated to the neighbors that we could meet after the hearing, not here after the meeting, that I would arrange for a meeting after the hearing, so I'm taking their names and addresses and I will contact them.
Excellent.
Thank you, thank you. Joseph Ollie?
Good morning, everybody. I'm at 101 Doris. Joseph Ollie, O-L-L-E. I've been there my whole life, 43 years. I have no prepared statement. A lot of concerns were brought up already. The traffic is a major problem. I don't think the study is very accurate. It's very bad now. It's just going to get worse. Dumpsters, a problem. Maybe I'd like to see a cinder block wall around the whole perimeter instead of arborvitaes or with arborvitaes, but some more barrier for rodents and stuff from the dumpster. Lighting, no one brought up lighting. I don't know what kind of lighting there's going to be. If it's going to shine into our yards.
I think there's an ordinance where we can't, in the town of Hempstead, where they can't shine their business lights into communities. Is that can be addressed also, sir?
Yes, typically in the declaration of restricted covenants that would be required to be filed in connection with this application, there is a provision that indicates that all lighting will be designed and installed to make sure that no light or glare extends off of the property and onto adjacent residential properties. We'll certainly do that here. With the new LED lighting, they're able to really design the lighting of sites very, very well so that there's no spillage of light off of the premises. So I have no doubt that we can accommodate that request.
Again, the one in my community, that was one of the concerns, and they did address it, and I've gotten no complaints about it, but the bedroom window would be right where the light would be shining in, so I understand exactly what your concern is.
I just want to voice my concern for the record, so if and when there's a problem, hopefully not, that they're addressed. And the fueling, will that be done at night, in the morning? Is there a vapor smell? Is there new technology for that? When the truck comes and delivers the gas, is that going to be a nuisance?
Mr. Vanessa, could you just answer that question since he knows the answer?
I know that the Sunoco doesn't do it a day. Are we going to be delivering during the day or night for with the big trucks, the diesel? Can we address that?
Sure. I'm going to have the site engineer address.
Good afternoon, Eric Line, Bowler Engineering, 2929 Express Drive North, Hopper, New York, here on behalf of the applicant. I've appeared before this board in the past. The fueling operations are going to occur on site. You'll see the underground storage tanks represented by the ovals up there. So it's centrally located to the site. The vents for the tanks are located up against the building. So they're as distal from the neighboring property owners as possible, but still to achieve the proper venting the tanks need. And the filling operations occur right on top of the tanks. So the little circles you'll see, those are the fill pipes. The fill pipe is attached. The truck drops the fuel, and he leaves. It's usually about a 15 or 20-minute process.
How often?
Once or twice a week.
And it'll be done during the daylight hours?
Usually it's during the day. It depends on the fuel delivery run, so this will have to get worked into their schedule, but 7-Eleven has decent control over that if there's going to be...
Where's exactly the building? Which side of the building?
The northwest corner, the little box at the northwest corner.
So that'll be right on our backyard.
Like Belmore Road?
Well, the vents are not active vents. The vents are in case of an escape, but it's a fail-safe design.
So the venting's not filling the filled tanks?
No, there's a vapor recovery process that occurs.
So to answer my question, there should be no smell when the tanks are full?
Correct.
Thank you. Will the town do a traffic study independent of that guy's study?
It is the burden of the applicant to do the traffic study.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Michael Koss?
confused. Is 7-Eleven, they just want to get into the gasoline business? Is that what it is now? Because they're across the street, they're very successful. There is no big problem with their deliveries, because I live across the street and I see 7-Eleven. My backyard, as my wife has spoke before, my backyard butts up against the building that they're going to tear down. Used to be Elm Air Conditioning, then it became Millworks, cabinet makers. So I'm just confused. They're very successful across the street. They have a big plot of land adjacent to them that they wiped out a house that was built there, that was there. They want to come across the street and pump gas. And their building is even smaller than it is now across the street. They're going to reduce their actual size of their building, the 7-Eleven building. Yeah, so I don't know what that's all about. I guess I'm not, I'm in favor of progress, I guess, but they have 8 more years left in their lease across the street. So I don't know why they just don't stay there, take the adjacent property, make it a gas station if they want. And it's up against all property that's commercial. Nobody's living there. It's just some little stores, big piece of empty property, and then there's 7-Eleven. Why don't they just do all that over there and stop? Because all 3 of us that are here today live right up against where they're going to do all this. So, again, they're all concerned, my neighbors and myself, lighting, rodents, garbage. How about all the people who will be hanging out now at 1, 2, 3 in the morning when there wasn't that before? You know, what these neighborhood kids are getting older, and they're going to be hanging out with bicycles and maybe worse. I got to think about that. My neighbor has a tiny 3-month-old baby that's living with them now. That's her concern. So I just don't understand. They just want to get into the gasoline, pumping gas business, because the rest of it sounds like they're not accomplishing anything else other than that. The rest of it sounds like they just want to get into that business. Put gas pumps on the other side of the street where they got a property right now and make them a gas station and do it. And they buy out those little stores over there if they want, lease them out, whatever. But I think they should. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I'm up against these buildings all my life. 40 years we're living there. It's been quiet, and my backyard it butts up against the building, so it's really private because there's no windows back there. So anyway, I just not quite sure what their ulterior motives are other than gasoline, because anything else doesn't seem logical what they're doing. So again, we'll talk to the attorneys to see address all the issues with rodents and trash and deliveries. Oh, one more thing. I know one more very important thing. I don't know about this man who sat here with his traffic stuff, but for the last 5, 6, 7 years, from Newbridge Road to Montour Avenue, you can't go. It's backed up for 2 miles because everybody coming off the Southern State, which is jammed up from 2 o'clock in the afternoon starting. They come off of Belmore Road, they come off of Newbridge Road, and they meet and they come along Jerusalem Avenue on the same side as the 7-Eleven now. So when they put a 7-Eleven on my side, with trucks coming in and out, and more traffic, and only 2 aprons they're claiming, it's just going to make traffic this way terrible, as opposed to terrible traffic this way. This man who sat here comes to my house, I'll give him a bottle of water, and I'll take him out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon from Newbridge Road. Let's see how far down he gets. I don't even go that way anymore. When I want to go out at night, I go north or I go west. I can't go east. Can't go. You just sit for half an hour until you creep along to Montour Avenue. So, I think it's just going to create more of a hassle. I live around the corner. It's a private little block, but I'll survive, I guess. But to me, the whole thing sounds crazy, but I just wanted to make that statement. The traffic is terrible. If you live in my area, anywhere near Jerusalem Avenue in North Belmore, you will see it. And now it's only going to create traffic the other way, which is always flowing pretty good.
So I think you should take Mr. Bonesso up on his offer to meet with you and have him meet at near your home so he can observe the traffic. We hear your frustrations. What you have to also understand that we as a town board cannot compel an applicant to go open their business somewhere else. We don't have that jurisdiction, but we understand and we hear your frustration. And I do hope that you can have productive dialogue and maybe get some of your concerns addressed so that you can have privacy and you don't have to have these concerns about the dumpster, about the rodents, all those things. I mean, I know that 7-Eleven has in the past said that they have regular extermination. Mr. Vanessa, is that something that you can speak to?
No.
Yes? Okay.
Just one more thing. Veteran Service Agency Volunteer of the Year 2016. Thank you for creating that.
Thank you for your service. God bless you.
Ralph Esposito and Paul Vista, my buddies and my bosses.
I love Ralph. He's the best, man. I like his voice, too.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I do not have any other slips on this public hearing. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Just closing. I've been told many things in my years as a zoning attorney, but fancy, this was the first time I was told fancy. But I don't know if it was a compliment. At any rate, I can't reiterate enough to the board that it has to keep in mind that this is commercially zoned property, business X zone property. If it's not a 7-Eleven convenience store and gas station that goes here, something is going to go onto these property and be redeveloped there. A 7-Eleven could go there as of right, as I discussed, without the gasoline service station. This is just seeking to include gasoline service, which is something that has been there for decades. So we think it's a good site and a good use for that combination of uses. Also, having done this for a long time, I come to realize that everyone thinks they know the traffic of their community better than the traffic consultants. I'm not taking anything away from what the neighbors said, but there's only one traffic expert in this room, and that's Mr. Going. Mr. Going performed an analysis in accordance with the standards and requirements that are good practice in the industry, and those findings have been put forth and are part of the record. The key elements are three things. One, that the site redevelopment will improve the access to the property, the ingress and egress, by reducing the number of curb cuts, placing them further away from the intersection, and relocating the site to the signalized intersection as opposed to the 7-Eleven and a non-signalized intersection. Two, the amount of new trips generated by this use are only approximately 20 to 22 trips in the peak hour period, morning and afternoon. And three, the parking provided, when you combine the 9 spaces available plus the parking that occurs at the fueling positions, is adequate to accommodate this site. This site, again, is going to be redeveloped in some way, shape, or form. Presently, I have to believe that millwork building makes some significant noise. I've had cabinet makers and fabricators as clients, and I've been to their sites, and I know how much noise they make. I know how much noise and activity can take place with service bays and repair shops. This is a different use, but one that we think fits the community. And again, we'll meet with the neighbors, we'll attempt to impose certain restrictions and conditions, make some modifications, perhaps enhancements to landscaping, to fencing, relocation potentially of the dumpster, and I think we can make the site work for everybody.
What I'd like to do is, the building, the convenience store itself is right where that building is that's being demolished, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there was a building there already, and this is just replacing that building.
Correct.
The gas station was there, and you're redoing a gas station. Traffic, I go down Jerusalem Avenue, and believe me, you try to get to a high school baseball or football game or lacrosse game, you're going to get there late because that traffic's pretty bad. You're not going to do anything to improve the traffic, but you've got to convince these people you're not going to do anything to increase the traffic there. So that, just regular being a good neighbor. So I'm going to suggest that we close the hearing. There's no more testimony coming. And I reserve the decision until you speak with the community and you have, some compromises and we come up with something that we can all live with.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Supervisor Gillen.
Aye.
Councilman Blake. Aye. Councilman Diaz-Pasito. Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boozley.
Yes.
Councilman Moscarella.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, guys?
Thank you. Mrs. Smith here, Mrs. Smith, I need to speak with you, please. We're going to take a 5-minute recess while I speak with Mrs. Smith, please, and then yes, and then we're going to call the decision calendar. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, will you now please call the decision calendar?
There is one item on the decision calendar. It is the application of JAV Gasoline Enterprises, Inc. to convert an existing automobile repair building to a convenience store and construct a canopy over existing pump islands, as well as maintain existing ID sign and operate self-service near Island Park, northwest corner of Austin Boulevard and Kingston Boulevard.
May I have a motion on the item on the decision calendar?
I move the decision be granted.
Second motion. Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Dillon?
Aye.
Councilman Blake?
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Pasito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boozley? Councilman Moscarella? Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, Madam Clerk, please call the administrative calendar.
On the administrative calendar, there are items 13 through 54. I also have two resolutions that are of an urgent or emergency nature. The first is a resolution authorizing the town of Hempstead to waive the adoption fees on dogs during the month of October for October Shelter Dog Adoption Month. This will be item number 55. The second is a resolution approving an agreement between the Lido Point Lookout Water District, Town of Hempstead, County of Nassau, New York, and the Lido and Point Lookout Fire District for the purpose of providing space at the Lido and Point Lookout Water District well site for the installation and maintenance of radio antennas, transmission and repeater equipment, and for the installation of pertinent equipment in connection with such use. This will be item number 56.
Would any of the board members like to sever any of the items on the administrative calendar?
Supervisor, I move to have to confer with the controller and members of I have to confer with the controller and other members of the board. I look to adjourn item 46 to the November 12th meeting. And I guess that's the first motion.
Mr. Longobardi, would you please come up here?
Second motion.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Longobardi, would you please come up here? So item number 46, which Councilman Diaz-Pasito has moved to adjourn, that is an item that is kind of reconciling different accounts so we can complete our audited financials. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And this would be financials from the 2018 budget passed by the Santino administration, but overseen during my administration. Is that correct?
Well, it was passed by the previous administration, yes. And
I'm sorry?
it was passed by the previous
Right, yes, okay. And, I'm sorry, go ahead. Sir.
No, I'm just going to say, and now as we reconcile this as part of the current reconciliation for 2018.
Right, and a large part of these transfers relate to $5 million worth of separation payments. Isn't that correct, Mr. Longobardi?
They are adjustments to salaries. They may include separation pay, which was part of an incentive offer during that time, as well as many changes in salaries for people who may have come and go.
Right, but separation payment is a recurring payment, is it not? Every year we have to make separation payments.
Well, that depends on the year. If people leave, yes, we make separation payments.
If people leave the employment with the town of Hempstead, we make separation payments. Is
That's
that
correct.
as a matter of course? Is that correct? And last year, Mr. Conroy sat where you were sitting, and he told us that the less savings from 2018 was we were way ahead of the game, and we weren't going to have to worry about separation payments. I disputed that, so that was not correct, was it?
Well, that depends on what you're looking at. When
Can we have a point of order? There is a motion to adjourn.
Right, and we did this last week.
But it's not, Supervisor, if I may complete my statement. It is not subject to debate, and I know that we've had wide latitude with that before, but I would like to ask one simple question. Is there any administrative reason why this cannot be put off until November 12th?
At this point, no. Our audited financial statements.
So what's the issue then? Let's vote on it.
So I can continue to run the meeting. I am the supervisor of the town. And I will continue with my statement. Excuse me, Senior Counsel, you can speak when I'm done speaking. So there are millions of dollars worth of adjustments to cover separation pay in item number 46.
There are monies to cover separation pay, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lombardo. And delaying this will delay our ability to complete our audited financials, will it not?
We will, this is part of finishing our audited financial statements. There were other reasons why they were delayed as well.
Thank you.
And by delaying or adjourning this so that the town board can read through this and understand a breakdown of perhaps what is separation payment and what are other payments that need to be made, is there any issue with delaying this? Is it going to have any effect on our budget process?
At this point, no.
At this point, there is no effect that this will have on the budget process. Okay, so my motion stands.
And I understand this effort to adjourn came because there's such a large item connected to the receiver of taxes office that they don't want to talk about. That's why we're adjourning this. Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the adjournment.
You are the supervisor. We're in a meeting with the public.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
I said you're out of order.
Councilman Blakeman?
On the adjournment, I vote aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito?
Aye.
Councilman Dunn?
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby?
Aye.
Councilman Moscarella?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion on the administrative calendar?
I also move to adjourn item 49 to a special meeting of the town board on Tuesday, October 8th, 2019 at 11:30 a.m. here at Town Hall so that the board members have time to review the tentative budget. I further move that the meeting on October 8th, 2019 at no later than 3 p.m. to accommodate members of the public who are observing Yom Kippur on October 9th. I further move the town clerk to give all due notice of this special meeting.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
I vote no. This meeting was scheduled a year ago. In fact, I put forward the calendar and the town council changed the calendar. It is a legal statutory requirement that the supervisors submit the budget on September 30th and then prior to October 5th that the tentative budget is supposed to be presented to the board so it can ripen into the preliminary budget so it can be put before the public. I don't think in the history of the town we've ever had such shenanigans going on with delaying things with the budget until I got here, until it was my budget. I think they were just rubber stamps generally if you look back at the voting. This is unnecessary delay. The town board members will have adequate time, 2 weeks, to review the tentative budget and make any amendments they feel are appropriate at the budget hearing, which is October 16th. And if the town board members, council members were so concerned about knowing what was in the budget, they could have taken up my invitation, which was sent out in July of this year, as it was the year before, to be a part of the budget process. Last year and this year, consistently, no one has accepted that invitation. I vote no.
Councilman Blakeman?
Yes, I take note that Councilman Diaz-Bazito's motion is respecting the October 16th date. so that there is no delay. So I vote aye.
Councilman Diaz-Bazito,
Aye.
Councilman Dunn,
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Gooseby,
And the fact that we just got the budget, it was on my desk when I came in this morning, normally we have it in September, I did not have it. I have to take time to go through this budget so I can see what's here and what's not here. I did not meet with you in July because I didn't even know what you had, and all I had to do was make sure that what I needed in my councilman district was there. So I need the time to do it, so I vote yes.
Councilman Mastromo.
Yes. And I just want to point out, I know the supervisor made a comment that the adjustments were being adjourned due to an amount in the receiver of taxes department. The adjournment had nothing to do with that. I know we like bringing politics into this. It's not the first time you've campaigned on town property, but the fact that we're adjourning this has absolutely nothing to do with the amount in the receiver of taxes line.
May I have a motion on the administrative calendar?
I move the administrative calendar.
Second.
Okay, we have a slip from Felix Procacci.
Felix Procacci. I'd like to point out that at the hearing on the Woodmere Golf Club, when that was adjourned, you gave everybody a chance to speak, and they were supposed to speak on the adjournment only, and I don't think one of them spoke on the adjournment. They spoke on that issue, which was incorrect. I know we put a big effort in this.
Are you talking about the administrative calendar?
Yes, I am. It's absolutely relevant to the administrative calendar. I know we put a big effort on putting flagpoles everywhere, but the importance of the flagpole and the flag is liberty and justice for all by our government. And we don't believe in that here, because when certain people want to speak on adjournment, you let them speak. This board lets them speak. Now, these are the items that you adjourned today are things I wanted to speak about today. And I think I deserve the courtesy that you gave the people in Woodmere Club because of liberty and justice for all. The flag means nothing unless you put the conviction behind the flag.
You got 2 minutes left. Why don't you speak about whatever you want that was on or wasn't on the administration?
And we're pretty confident you'll be here for the adjournment as well.
When did they elect you presiding officer, Mr. Blakeman?
All right, just Felix, say what you wanted to say.
I'm my constituent. I'm sticking up for your rights.
Since when? The transfer of funds, can you go into detail on the transfer of funds that are in item 46, which is being adjourned? I think it's like 26 million, I roughly put it together.
Mr. Lombardo can meet with you and explain it to you, or April Smith can explain it to you.
I like to do it in a public hearing, that's why I come here. If I could meet in private,
It's not on the administrative calendar anymore, so if you want to talk about it during the
like I said, it wasn't on the administrative, the calendar when you adjourned the Woodmere Club thing. That was adjourned, yet you let people speak.
Felix, you overruled me. Now you have to take the ruling from the chair.
You know, once again, no one elected you anything. I also...
You didn't vote for me, Felix?
No, I didn't vote for you.
Generally, Mr. Procacci, those adjustments are made at year end so we can complete our audited financials, and when maybe there's been overages in certain areas and certain departments and certain line items, they have to transfer funds to make up and adjust the books for the overages.
I know what the reasons were. I wanted to go into the reasons why they were so large, because that was above normal. Also, another thing on the, we have the budget on the calendar, which has also been adjourned, and I objected to changing the calendar, leaving the calendar the way it was because of what happened the previous year, but everybody voted for this. So then now we want to change it again, which is not fair to the public, because I did put things in my schedule a year in advance, so I'll put things, you know, so I have to check my schedule. I may have scheduled something else on the days that you decided to do different things, and I don't think it's really fair. And like you said in the past, I've been here 9 years, and it was always I all together on every budget.
with no discussion whatsoever. Not one issue ever got brought up until Eric King Sweeney and Bruce Blakeman in 2017 started a fight with Santino, or vice versa, rather. And that was the first time ever that I think there was a fight over the budget. And I guess I have nothing else to talk about on these things, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pakachi. Mary Ellen Craig?
Mary Ellen Cray, 436 Locust Avenue, Uniondale. On number 36, what kind of repair to the elevated Uniondale water tank, please?
I'm sorry, could you say, was that 46?
36.
36.
I'm sorry, I don't remember. That's okay. The commissioner was saying
Good afternoon, members of the Town Board, Commissioner Reinhardt, Department of Water. This is to repaint the Uniondale water tank and do repairs to the vent system on the top of the tank that allows air in and out of the tank as water goes in and out.
You want to go toward the playground.
Say that again about the vent system, please.
When water goes in and out of the tank, air has to make up the space where the water was in. So the venting system on it currently is an outdated system that was updated to a newer type of system.
Thank you. And here it says also 37, the acquisition, construction, or reconstruction of, or additions to the water supply and distribution systems for Uniondale Water District.
Gonna go down into the rain garden over here.
Yeah, 37 relates to the UCMR3 program, or the contaminant monitoring rule. It would be for treatment of 1,4-dioxane at the Oak Street.
It's going to be two separate
stations. So professional services designed for treatment.
Should be.
And what did you call it? What kind of containment?
Getting done soon.
It's unregulated contaminants.
You got it. Anytime.
Thank you. And on number 45, anything that can be done as far as working with the Department of Conservation and Waterways for the restoration of the marshlands is to be recommended. Thank you.
Thank you. Madden, Ms. Madden?
Item 46, as Felix mentioned, there is an excessive amount of money as opposed to other years being transferred. You said there's someone available to speak to privately about this?
Yes, you can speak to Mr. Longobardi or Ms. Smith about this.
Thank you.
Okay, I do not have any other slips. May I have a roll, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the administrative calendar.
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman? Aye. Councilman Diaz-Bazito? Aye. Councilman Dunn? Aye. Senior Councilwoman Guzman? Aye. Councilman Muscarella? Aye.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn? Madam Clerk?
Supervisor Gillen?
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman? Aye. Councilman Diaz-Bazito? Aye. Councilman Dunn? Aye. Senior Councilwoman Guzman? Aye. Councilman Muscarella? Aye.
Okay, we will now move into public comment. First, we have Felix Pakachi.
Since the budget's not really due till November, due to state law, I think we should do what a lot of the villages do, and they have informal workshops. All the council members don't have to be here. And they ask the public what they like to see in the budget. And I go to Floral Park budget hearings, and they go through an exhaustive account of each trustee goes through a section of the budget, and it's in really in that detail. Dominic could tell you. And I think it's good and people could ask questions on those items. I mentioned this, I think this is the third time, Also, issue. Now it's been, it's pushing 2 months. It's, yeah, almost 2 months since I brought this up, where it's very clear that this guy has an ethical violation, and I think it's 2 ethical violations. One is the campaign issue, and the other one is he just threw the issue on John Mastromarino contract. That is an illegal contract, you know, by our own standards. And if you could dismiss that contract like anything else, or that, you know, that procurement rule, rather, dismiss the procurement rule so willy-nilly, then every procurement rule could be, we might as well get rid of the procurement rules. So I wanted to ask the supervisor, because your attorney is handling this, has Mr. Wilde got back to you regarding redoing his one-sentence analysis?
Have we gotten an update yet, Mr. Pittman?
He said that he was still reviewing it. And I followed up with
One
him.
sentence is he reviewing? Which part of the one sentence? With I think it's all of like 7 words he was concerned about. I mean, I'm not sure how long, I'm not a good reader, but I could do better.
Is Mr. Evans?
I can't answer what he's doing. He did say he was reviewing it, and I also advised him of the 120 days that's set forth in Chapter 65, which he's entitled to review and decide, which he's entitled to review and decide the matter. And I understand that your complaint was initially submitted, months ago, and then it took him a while to decide it. So, I made him aware of the 120 days again. Hopefully he'll provide it soon. I don't know if he's here to speak on it.
Can we try to get an update from Mr. Wilde on where he is in terms of his response?
Certainly.
We'll share that with you, Mr. Procacci.
We do need to put another, I'm not going to do it because I know it's worth nothing, but I'd like you to put another ethics complaint. I know you did the one on the campaign finance issue. This is more, that's just a suspect of impropriety. This is impropriety. This codifies that he's corrupt. This doesn't, this second part is, there's nothing to look into because it's very clear he misread it. Nobody would go under oath, I don't believe anyone here would go under oath and say you could read the first 7 words of a procurement regulation, dismiss the next 45, 50 words, and say that I swear under oath I believe this to be true. I mean, I defy anyone to do that. But so I think that we need to, on behalf of the public, to file another ethics complaint. This board, someone on this board needs to do that ASAP, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Procacci. Yasminda Parada-Lowe. Ms. Lowe from North Baldwin. Diane Madden.
Diane Madden, full disclosure, I'm running for Hempstead Town Supervisor on the issue of the compliance officer. So do I assume that this is still a person that's overseeing all of the waste, fraud, and abuse complaints that constituents are submitting?
The compliance officer is still in place. He has been referred to the ethics committee with respect to the campaign donation issue, but he is still in place until we find if there's any findings against him.
Is there a deadline for that investigation?
It has been referred to the ethics committee. Mr. Ra, I don't believe they have convened yet. I did send out a request for them to convene, but then again, we had this vacancy that suddenly happened, it's up to the town board majority to put forward another submission of a name because it's their appointment for that board. And I don't know if that impairs their ability to meet. Does it as a legal matter, Mr. Ra?
Currently, we have a 4-member board. 4-member boards usually don't work. You need a even odd number. So we haven't convened because we're waiting for the 5th member to be named.
So maybe I would ask my colleagues to try, in the Republican majority, to try to nominate someone at the next town board meeting that is an open meeting.
As far as the operational audit for the animal shelter, what is the status for the lawsuit for an operational audit?
Mr. Ra? the lawsuit? Can you give us an update on the status of the lawsuit?
I don't have, there's no update on the lawsuit, it's pending.
So we have a lawsuit that's still pending, the taxpayers are funding, and the operational audit is still being obstructed.
Are we, is there motion practice? Where are we? Are we waiting for a decision, Mr. Ron? Do you know on the lawsuit?
Yes, I don't really want to discuss pending litigation.
Okay.
So, but it's ongoing.
It's ongoing. If it's waiting for a decision, we're just waiting for the court to decide that. I don't know the procedural posture of the case offhand.
Okay. There was a volunteer ban the last time I was here. Does anyone know if that's been resolved? It's been 2 weeks. This is a person that had gone through a police department background check for the work that she does and passed, of course, with flying colors. So I don't think those animals can afford to have people willing to spend their time to go in there and walk dogs, to be held out.
Commissioner, do you know the status of that volunteer?
I believe right now it's still a legal matter with the town attorney's office.
Is it in your office, Mr. Ron?
Yes, it is. It's still being reviewed.
And who is handling that legal matter? I'm assuming it's Albina Kativa?
It's being handled by the town attorney's office.
I take issue with that, Mr. Rod, because she was involved with being on an interview committee for a fraudulent contract that was passed here to do a Republican Party political favor. That's a conflict in your office, and you should take issue with that for many reasons. I would like to find out if I can meet with the town clerk and possibly someone from your staff. I am waiting on many, many foils. I only have to assume that they're being held up. No reflection of that staff, because I think they are spectacular. But I'd like to do that because I'm waiting on surveillance camera tapes and many foils that are not being responded to.
Sure, Diane, well, we can make an appointment, no problem.
I appreciate that. And as far as I believe, and I apologize, I didn't speak on this, but I understand there's going to be fees waived for the animal shelter. I am fully supportive of that, but it just reminds me of days gone back when I used to talk to Kate Murray and Santino, that free animals, that's not the solution here. You need a behavior department. Last time, Supervisor, you promised your liaison would get in touch with the prior trainer that did a remarkable job there, built an entire department. I would take 10 minutes just to describe what she did and the track she had the animal shelter on. There were no volunteer bans at the time. People worked together. There was one site. No one was banned from it. She brought unity. She trained the animals, and the staff and volunteers were not being injured to the degree that they have, where you hear from the union president that these employees are getting hurt. Nothing is changing. These calls apparently are not being made. People are being injured. What is an update on that?
The RFP, I believe, is going out this week, and once the RFP goes out, Ms. Garver will be contacted, as I indicated last week to you, our last board meeting.
And as far, right, but I would think in 2 weeks someone could manage to put up, all they have to do is re-put up the RFP. It's not complicated. So I understand that's your liaison, but that's what happens when you appoint a liaison that has really not driven to help the animals.
Thank you, Ms. Madden. There's procedural protocols that you must follow when you put out an RFP, and we're adhering to those. Pearl Jacobs.
Thank you.
Pearl Jacobs, Uniondale. Senior Councilwoman Gooseby, at the last meeting, you stated that the $1 million would be reflected on today's agenda for the completion of the Uniondale Streetscaping project. Could you elaborate and let me know what's impeding the progress of this project? What are the roadblocks?
And I have, as Mr. Hayward, he's not here, on September 19th, it was given to him, it's sitting on his desk. So once it gets off his desk and it gets to a resolution, it will be on the calendar.
Why is it sitting on his desk?
I don't know, you have to ask him.
Well, last week you told me that it would be on this calendar.
I don't, maybe I did, but I'm.
Yeah, no, you did.
It should have been, okay?
Would have had
It's
it
been
been
handed
the
in,
next
yes.
day.
It's sitting on.
Sorry.
Procedurally, after the last board meeting, because there was such a close time period between board meetings, usually we have a 2 week, every other week, but because it was this week, that resolution would have been handed up the day after the board meeting, according to the rules of the town of Hempstead.
But it's on his desk.
Okay, would you, Senior Councilwoman Boothby, would you have your office get back to me and let me know?
Well, you'll see, when he's back, I don't know where he is.
He's volunteering, rebuilding houses for hurricane victims. He took his own personal time off, and that's where he is today.
Maybe someone can get it off of his desk and give it to the person so it can get on the calendar. Is anyone here who can do that?
He'll be back, I think, at the end of the week, and we don't have another regular town board meeting till November 12th, so I don't think that we have any worries about if he builds a couple more houses.
Supervisor, it's not on his desk. It came in after the closing of the last calendar, which means we haven't had a meeting to put it on the calendar. So it was received after the deadline. It was received
after the deadline.
Okay, thank you for that explanation, because I was just following up on the statement that Senior Councilwoman Boothby made at the last meeting. We have another issue in our community, Senior Councilwoman Boothby, that is a result of the construction at A. Holly Patterson. I'm receiving a lot of calls from residents regarding nocturnal animals like raccoons and possums. They have been displaced, so now they're running around the community because of the evacuation at the Holly Patterson site. And also these animals are being left in our streets. People are running over them in cars, okay, which is not good. I received a call before I came here this morning from a neighbor on Almond Street, and I just told her to please call sanitation. She said the raccoon is laying in front of her, in the street in front of her house, okay? So a lot of this is happening in our community, and it's a result of the Holly Patterson development. These animals have been displaced.
Wild animals.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not good for the animals, and it's not good for the community, because it's a health and safety issue now. These animals are being left in our streets. It's 90 degrees out there, I think, today, I'm not sure, so I hope they remove that animal. I told her to call.
You call Legislative Bylaw, that's a Board of Health. We can't now take.
City Councilman Boothby,
We cannot take.
Isn't that a sanitation issue?
No, we cannot take wild animals.
Well, can you call Legislative Bylaw? Why do I have to call Legislative Bylaw?
Because she is your legislator, that's her.
You're my senior councilman, you're my councilman. Why am I? I don't work, I don't get paid for this. I have to be the in-between for the legislator, for the town, really. I'm coming to you, I'm bringing this issue to you.
Ms. Jacobs, are you talking about an animal that was struck and it's deceased, or are you talking about?
Yes, it's deceased.
All right, what street is it on? We'll send
It's on Almond Street. I hope it was removed. I told her to call this morning. Okay, and this is happening very frequently, so I just want to give you that heads up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Stuart Kroll?
Stu Kroll, Great Neck. I've got some comments about the animal shelter, a few other comments as well. First of all, I'd like to know how our friend Christy Fonte now has a $55 an hour part-time job, I guess it's now a full-time job, at the town shelter. His board clearly did not want to renew her contract and risk being embarrassed. She was an unqualified union secretary who apparently knew the right person. 4 of her 5 qualifications were total fabrications, total lies, and she shouldn't have obviously been able to get away with it. I would imagine she had a say, along with Pastore and the previous shelter liaison at the time, in deciding that Brock should be killed when there was a rescue waiting to take him in. She must bear serious culpability for the fact that Hempstead had to send dogs to the ill-fated facility in Utica. If we had somebody competent, that probably wouldn't have happened. Incidentally, perhaps someone can tell me if our town ever made a monetary donation, Laura, you would probably know that, to Ulster County Canines that actually took our dogs.
I think Mr. Ross spoke to this last week, and we are not permitted to. Is that correct, Mr. Ross?
Correct, Supervisor.
Why not? What's the regulation prohibiting making a donation to people that took our dogs and they're incurring all the expenses?
Supervisor says. I'll talk to you privately.
Can't hear you.
He said he discussed the matter with Mr. Kroll privately.
Okay.
But there was a legal reason, Mr. Ross, is that correct?
That was hopes for tails for hopes.
Any other situation where somebody lied about their qualifications so egregiously they would be fired immediately. Perhaps I can claim to have a surgical degree and Mount Sinai will hire me. I don't suspect they would want me to risk lives, so what I'd like to know is why is Fonte allowed to make life and death decisions when she is clearly unqualified? And not only unqualified, but clearly unethical. Speaking of ethics, I believe it was Mr. Marino, who I believe is here now, with his decision to hire Fonte. I did not have the opportunity to question him at previous meetings. I have some questions that I'd like to ask him as to why she was hired. So if we can have him, join us, I would like to ask him something.
You're not here to, we're not here to listen to you cross-examine somebody who's, what his qualifications are. That's not what the board's here for.
Her qualifications, I think.
Her qualifications.
If someone hires somebody who lied on their application.
But you gotta bring them before the board and question them. I'm not here to listen to you. Somebody who's not even a resident come here and start questioning our employees. I'm not gonna allow you to do that. And if you do, and you're allowed to do it by your supervisor, I'm gonna walk out of the room, because that's not what I'm here for. Here you, and I'm not a town of Hempstead resident, interview one of our employees. No, ain't gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
Well, you know what? They're hiring unqualified people, for political jobs, and apparently they don't have to answer any questions at all. And the board didn't want to hire her, so he went ahead and hired her part-time.
You want questions? You want to answer your questions? Go ask. Not on my time.
Not on your time? Well, actually, it's not your time. You're representatives of the people here. It's our time, not yours.
How are you not a town resident?
It doesn't make any difference.
It does.
It does?
It does.
Well, I don't think it does. Anyway, I would be interested, as I said, in hearing why he decided to hire Ms. Fonte when she was clearly unqualified and what amounts to a full-time salary. If our town board and supervisor allows such people to make such life and death decisions for political reasons, then perhaps they need to be replaced. Speaking of Mike Pastore, he drove up to Utica a few months ago to the facility where our dogs ended up being horribly abused. He left the facility and gave it a clean bill of health. Perhaps by his low standards it was. There are at least 5 lawsuits specifically naming it. Apparently what the charges are is top secret information which we're not entitled to know. Should his incompetence be protected, or does the public have the right to know why this man...
Your time is up. All right, Ms. Margaret Kelly.
All right, thank you.
Now I get to say good afternoon.
I'm sorry, you have to say good afternoon.
Okay. Margaret Kelly, West Hempstead, New York. I'm here as a community member. About a month ago, I sent a letter in to all the council members, as well as the supervisor and the town attorney, in regards to the level of respect that happens inside this room. Okay, and I'm sure you will have. I don't often come to the meetings, but I do watch the live feed. Unfortunately, because of my disability, I'm unable to always get here. I find the level of respect towards our councilman, our supervisor, and our attorney to be ludicrous. Until somebody sits in the seat that you're sitting in, I don't believe anybody has the right to berate or discredit what you do, the amount of hours. And I know people will look at this and say, this is a suck up or whatever. It's not. I've watched over and over. I've watched name calling from people in our community. That is never acceptable. We can disagree. We can respectfully disagree. But I have to tell you, as a community member, it's very disheartening to see our community come out and berate you. On multiple occasions, I've watched this, and I finally get to the point, I have a little bit of an Irish temper, I will admit, but I finally got to the point where I put my feelings down in words. Is there a way that that type of behavior can be halted in this room? I understand freedom of speech as it goes on behind me. I understand freedom of speech, and I understand people being upset, but there's a way to conduct yourself, especially in front of a board, that I think needs to be followed. And if there's a way that that can be done, I would be 100% behind in the help of that. And I do thank you for your time, but I think the level of respect in this room has gone down to the point of no return unless something is done immediately about it.
I wish you would think of something. I think people should think about how they speak to us when they come up. They would not like it if we did it to them. And it's hard sometimes, you know, you just look at people and say, oh my goodness. If you want something done, just say it. You know, you can be kind to each other. That's all we're here. I'm here to help and make sure I take care of the people that I represent. That's it.
The old saying,
people think you're not human anymore. So, but they think this is what they're supposed to do, I think.
And on one more note, I just wanted to say that recently, I've had the, I would say the pleasure, and I know I'll hear rumbling behind me, of being at the Town of Hempstead shelter, which we did adopt a cat. And we walked through the kennels. The kennels were very clean. And maybe it was the day that I was there. I saw no sign of any abuse. People need to realize these animals that have been running free on the streets, that have been in homes, loving homes, and are now put in cages. Their attitudes towards human beings change. The fear factor is there. And I don't think that's ever discussed. It's a fear issue, not necessarily a disciplinary issue. And maybe there is not enough time by the people that are there to spend with these caged animals. But I can tell you that the cat that we adopted is the most loving, wonderful animal that I've ever had the privilege of owning. Thank you so much.
Ms. Kelly, just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here today, and thank you for all you do for the veteran, the military, and the law enforcement community, and wish everybody at home a safe year ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
The last person?
Mary Ellen Craig.
I would like to, Mary Ellen Craig, Uniondale, I would like to suggest that in the future, the tree surveys and some of these other things that are asked of developers are available to the community before decisions are made. I think that it's very important for people in the community to see what is being taken away and what the rationales are for these things. So I hope that that will become part of the procedure in the future. Also, I believe that the letters to the residents on hearings should include site plans. It's very hard for people to recognize what is happening if they don't see an actual plan of the proposal. And on St. Matthias, I would like to say how delighted I am that things are moving along toward landmark status, and thank Senior Councilwoman Gooseby for her advocacy. Thank you. Yes, I know.
Oh, okay, I thought you said we're moving along.
Well, you moved it along, and I thank you.
All right, thank you.
Really thrilled.
Everybody have a wonderful day.